All right, Joel, Blood and Guts is in the books. Team AEW threatens to set Jack Perry on fire, thus cajoling. I don't know if that seems not serious enough of a term, but cajoling Matthew Jackson into quitting before Darby set Jack Perry on fire. Quite the finish to a match, a threat of setting someone on fire. What do you think of that as a finish to the sequel to War Games, a tradition going back many decades now?
Yeah, I mean they delivered where there was plenty of blood, not any guts, thankfully. But I thought that it definitely delivered with the spots and the violence that you would look forward to seeing in this type of match. But yeah, to have a finish like that of threatening to use the fire. Darby has an infatuation with fire at this point. Last time we saw him, he had that flamethrower. And so this time just threatening to light Jack Perry on fire without having the other tricks to protect him from that. So thankfully, we did not get fire in this match, but we got plenty of other gimmicks, including staple guns and street signs, the tables, chairs, all those other things that you would assume in this match type. Obviously, there was a big tease of dissension between Team AEW, again, to get you to think that Team Elite were all on the same page. But in the end, Hangman Adam Page had his own agenda throughout that match, and which led to Team AEW capitalizing over the spirit of AEW is what they said this was for tonight.
So that's a good recap, but I still want an answer. Did you like the finish?
I mean, it protects Jack Perry in this way as a martyr who's not going to who's not going to quit at the end. And so, of course, they put it onto Matthew Jackson, who continues to be a weasel of an authority figure throughout this. So it worked for me as a way to, if you want to have Team AEW winning this matchup by threatening the big spot. That's usually the way that a lot of these blood and guts War Games types matches have a finish to.
Yeah, I mean, my only issue with the finish, and Darby's already done it, so it really is less of an issue. But I just don't know if anybody should be actually. We shouldn't believe that anybody would actually set somebody on fire within the confines of a match. I don't know if the issues between Darby and Perry reach a level, and I'm not sure what that level would be. Maybe going into someone's home and cutting a promo over their baby's crib or something like that might justify threatening to set someone on fire. But it feels I know a lot of people are going to like it and some people are going to think it's too far and uncomfortable. To me, it feels like a wrestling company booking a super dramatic, oh my God, is he going to do something that you know he's not going to do because he's not protected in any way type finish for the shock value of it. So I think it depends on how the lens through which you watch wrestling. If you're like, you can kind of just think, hey, Darby will do anything for the pride of Team AEW against Jack Perry, who has done bad things and said mean things. So he's going to literally kill him. I mean, there's no way with his arms extended, covered in fuel, if you set him on fire, he's either going to be badly burned and beyond beyond recognition. So to me, it's just too far. Like staple guns, okay, can understand a staple gun to an arm or to a chin or whatever. It's like even barbed wire sandwich, that's cool. But like it's a finish in which I'm watching this going, there's no special effect that's going to make it possible. So it's just a matter of, does Jack Perry or Matthew Jackson give up? So I just kind of mixed feelings. Again, it just kind of depends on if you're watching a match like this thinking they can do anything and you're not thinking that's not something they're going to do, then it sort of works for you. But I don't know. I can do without fuel, plastic fuel, canisters of fuel being poured on people, being threatened to set on fire. To me, it feels gratuitous the more I think and talk about it. But like I said, I mean, I say that's me personally. I'm not necessarily speaking for every type of wrestling fan who sort of sees it through the lens of something doesn't have to actually be plausible to happen for me to buy into the possibility of it happening. And like the storyline of Matthew Jackson, this weasel giving up before something we know isn't going to happen happens.
So. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought that when Darby had the flamethrower before, I thought that he actually lit Jack Perry on fire with that. So little bit of a callback to that.
But he was there was like a sense of being protected Like it wasn't just completely exposed like Perry was in it, where you're not thinking, oh, they've prepared him for it in some way. But I mean, it's a good point. I mean, they've gone there before, and I kind of didn't love that either. But go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just a callback to it. You can believe that the Darby Allin character is crazy enough to do that. But yeah, realistically, are they going to unprotected, light somebody on fire? No. But within the context of what we've already seen in AEW, you've seen him on fire, yes, in a more contained setting, but it's just a callback to that. And then putting it on Matthew Jackson to be the one to give the match to Darby at All In, so that they can finish that. And also just being the weasel to finally end the match, because somebody has to submit or surrender. So it made sense to have something at such extreme lengths to get him to do that.
Yeah. And like I said, I mean, me saying I'm not buying, even though they sent him on fire before under different circumstances, I wasn't buying in this case he was going to do it. It doesn't mean that I can declare it for sure a bad finish. Just for me, and I get it fits storyline. It was a callback. This isn't like terrible. But I just setting someone on fire, it kind of makes me more uncomfortable than thinking, oh, this is super cool. As I watch that. But and I guess part of it is, I mean, this was an amazingly violent and stunt filled, and I think crowd satisfying blood and guts match. And it was enthralling and all of that. And so how do you come up with a finish that tops a lot of the other things that you did?
Right.
I mean, that's in play. The problem is this didn't feel, I mean, I thought they told the story of Hangman and Swerve well, which is like, they only cared about each other, especially Hangman. We can get more into that. But I didn't feel the grudge otherwise was enough to justify that the level of sort of violence where it's like, yeah, these two teams need to go at each other in that way. The Jacksons are sort of annoying semi-comedy figures who abuse their power in annoying, pestering ways, but not really anything too serious. So it didn't quite, the violence I felt overreached the backstory of the match a little bit too. And maybe that took me a little bit out of it. Like I said, if this was Hangman threatening to set Swerve on fire for Swerve invading his house at a different point in the storyline, I might be like, it's not I don't find the threat of setting somebody on fire super entertaining, but it fits the storyline a little bit better.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a lot more there's a lot more backstory to what's going on with Swerve and Hangman, and unfortunately, they went through the stage setting as Excalibur recapped through the picture-in-picture, so I didn't even see that part of it, of them basically being written out of the match at that point.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, they haven't had this type of the backstory, the real grudge between each other for Perry and Darby Allin, because they're trying to build something to the bigger show.
Yeah. Let's throw in some chat room comments on this. Dougie Doug, welcome, says it was a cordial ending to a bloodbath. Darby is like, I'll kill a man if you don't give me a title match at All In. And Matt Jackson's like, that seems reasonable. And we shrug it off and go off the air. Adam Kidd says it was a bloody spot fest for the sake of a spot fest, but adds they worked hard. And Chris Johnson said, agree with Adam, just spots. It was a stunt show. And Dougie Doug added, it could have done without the geek squad of Jeff Jarrett, Billy Gunn, and Prince Nana too. Yeah, we can get into that. Durrell says, I wish this match had been built for 4 weeks with stakes and some type of consequences. And Ben Jacob says, my only hope was that they wouldn't get outside the cage. I just prefer the whole thing to stay inside the ring. And Derek just said in response to my point about Perry being protected last time, Derek says, yes, he did. I think it's response to you, Joel. Yes, he did do it before, but Perry's fully clothed. This was obvious. We're not going to get a purposeful immolation on live television. And so that's where I just wasn't buying it was going to happen. And I honestly don't think the audience thought it was going to happen there. So yeah, anyway, so there's a variety of comments there, Joel. I'll keep kind of looking at the chat room and I'll get some of your feedback to this.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with all those comments there. I mean, it's just a matter of case of, in these blood and guts war games matches, what are you going to do that? Because they've already shown that, in the steel cage matches, they'll go outside, they'll jump off the cage, they'll go through the cage, they'll go through the table. And so it's you get yourself caught into this of keep raising the stakes so high to be what's going to be the final thing that ends this type of match. And so, yeah, you get into these kind of ridiculous things where I'm no denying that it's ridiculous to think that somebody's going to be lit on fire like that with no protection, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, as far as the match, it was a ton of spots, as you would expect in any sort of blood and guts match, that they try to deliver on that stipulation by knowing that you're going to see a lot of gimmicks, a lot of props in there. People are going to work hard. But this match just really lacked any sort of real heat between the two teams, that people were, there was a lot of talk about being disappointed about who were the competitors on team AEW. Where is Jon Moxley? Where are some of these other people to come to the side of AEW? But clearly, they're building it up as these, different participants on the teams are leading to some matches that are going to be at All In. It certainly seems like there's going to be something between Hangman Page and Okada sooner rather than later. It looks like seems fitting to be an All In type of match, but they just never had real stakes for this. And that's what people had been calling for. Is this going to be over some sort of power struggle? And I somewhat mockingly say about Swerve that he said that tonight is a battle for the spirit of AEW. It's just so, it's just basically saying, hey, we're just having this match to have this match. It'll be entertaining. It's leading to some other things. There just wasn't that real stakes involved, other than, it's another episode of Dynamite as we are hopefully wrapping up the negotiation periods with WBD. They have some other big matches that they can throw in on Dynamite leading up to the All In show. So yeah, just trying to get some big ratings. But I think in doing so, you could have told a lot better stories while keeping these existing storylines going into All In.
Yeah, it didn't help. It didn't help, but they had a storyline purpose with Mark Briscoe being the guy who brings everyone together. They had the backstage promo where everyone kind of said what they were in it for. And I think it underlined some of the criticism of this match and the lack of stakes. Acclaimed to saying, hey, I just want to get at the Bucks. We want the tag titles. And obviously Swerve and Hangman had already been kind of separated off to the side, as Hangman just wanting to get his hands on Swerve. So Mark Briscoe has to kind of step in after everybody on the babyface team talks about having their own agenda, and kind of rallies them to come together as a group. And I think that underlines a little bit how this did feel a little bit pieced together in terms of a team AEW. And yes, I mean, like Jon Moxley, for instance, not being part of this match feels kind of weird. Another chat room comment here. Keith Bridie says, why am I rooting against Jack Perry? He was handcuffed and defenseless. He took a legit chair shot to the head. He'd rather be burned alive than lose. Darby came across like an unhinged creep. So, I mean, that's tough. But then Banda Jacobs says, great storytelling at the end. Like this more than just more violence that was already in the match. And so this was a threat of violence, but not violence. And, there is a difference between those two things, but almost the threat of violence, after all, we saw to the level that it was, again, with somebody just with their skin exposed, handcuffed to a cage, no way to just, and nobody around to actually like extinguish him. Like, no, there isn't like a crew of people with fire extinguishers ready to put the fire out. If he gets set on fire and we're to buy that this is actual fuel being poured onto him, there's not people who can get into the cage soon enough to actually save his life like last time. So that's the thing. It's a bit of a stretch. But I mean, we opened the show with Will Ospreay about having his own SUV, and apparently the butt of the joke is he's never driven in the United States before. That was like supposed to be a funny line, and he happened to kneel right where a knife was in a tire and had to act surprised when there was no reason for him to kneel by the front tire. I mean, sometimes it's not the most high IQ execution of some of these concepts. It goes back to Shibata in the phone interpreter, where it just says things and he pretends to type or doesn't pretend to type. Sometimes they just do things in such a sloppy, low IQ way. It takes you out of the moment. And this wasn't in the same way, but I think it's a similar mindset, which is, are people watching this going to buy, we're going to set somebody on fire when there's nobody around with fire extinguishers? He's not protected. And this would kill him and obviously be going too far. There's no way to fake this. It's a lot, but this is a company that also has crash pads set up everywhere and doesn't think, well, maybe that'll look too fake for an impromptu move. So they're not good with the details, to be honest. But that said, the wrestlers were, amazing things that audiences are going to applaud them for. But they took a lot of risks to fill 45 minutes with violence that would prompt, this is awesome and holy shit chance for a match that, as we're all kind of, I think, like agreeing on, didn't quite have the story to support the violence we saw.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a match with a ton of violence in there. All the guys worked very hard within this match, but it's the last thing that AEW needs is more injuries to the roster.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like that's one of the notes I have written down for my podcast is just all these injuries that keep accumulating. And a lot of times it's even just from simple things that are routine things that are happening. And everyone just keeps putting their bodies in danger. And Darby is the guy who continues to bounce back so many times in these matches from doing a lot of crazy stunts when he was using his upper body strength to climb up the cage, and then he just bounced off the ground. That there's so many of those concerning things that is it worth it for the holy shit chance and for popping the rating on there? Hopefully nobody is injured coming out of this match, but I mean, that just continues to be a concern every time I see these blood and guts matches is that everybody wants to top it, and everybody says that they want to do things that people haven't seen before. Yeah. Darby was saying that before this matchup to lean to the hype with it. And to keep doing the stipulation, you got to find other creative, more cerebral ways versus just versus people continuing to jump off the cage and obviously threatening to light people on fire. That I think there's some more creative ways to go about this match type.
Lady B adds in the chat room, it was obvious certain items like the mic, gas can lighter were in the right place for Darby to find, so that definitely slowed down the momentum of the ending, where it was borderline awkward. So anyway, we welcome diverse mix of thoughts by email and by chat. So let's pause here and introduce ourselves and let people know how they can participate in the show in various ways. This is the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Post Show following the Wednesday, July 24th, 2024 episode of AEW Dynamite. I'm Wade Keller, host of the show, the editor, publisher, and founder of the Pro Wrestling Torch weekly newsletter and the website PWTorch.com. Yesterday, Jason Paul joined me on our Blue Logo podcast, the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling podcast, as opposed to the post show feed. We are live streaming on YouTube, but we are also available to download as a audio only podcast. Just search Wade Keller in your podcast app to subscribe to the Red Logo Show if you prefer to listen to us in audio format, or also and for sure also subscribe to the Blue Logo Show, because that is not available to watch or stream on YouTube. That includes the flagship show with Jason Powell from ProWrestling.net yesterday. But we're here to talk Dynamite, and there's a lot more that happened on this show than just blood and guts, although we certainly can talk more blood and guts. I am joined by Joel Dehnel. He is the host of the PWTorch Daily Cast's AEW themed show. Joel, welcome to the post show and the co-host chair.
Yeah, thanks for having me back on here, Wade. This was a good episode where they crammed in a lot of stuff, so we have plenty of stuff to talk about throughout the show.
Absolutely. For sure. So the way to participate in the show, one way is by email. I put that up on the screen for our YouTube streamers, wadekellerpodcast@gmail.com. If you're live streaming the show, you can participate that way. You can also, if you're downloading our show or watching us on demand later, keep that in mind when you're watching SmackDown on Friday, Raw and Dynamite next week and onward, that's a way for you to participate, even if you don't watch our show live, or you can be a video caller or join us in the chat room. Speaking of which, the chat room is open, and as you know, we've been reading comments from there, so people who join us live are able to get onto the show. You can certainly give yourself a better chance to be on screen and read on the show with a super chat, so consider yourself invited to support us in that way and get a boost to your comment. And the other way you can participate is if you're a Patreon supporter at our PWTorch VIP part of Patreon, or as a regular VIP member. And in my TV reports on Dynamite and also Raw and SmackDown, I include a link where you can be a video caller. Now, you can also turn off your camera and be an audio caller. We do not require you to be on camera, but you are invited to do that. That is exclusively right now for our Patreon supporters at patreon.com/PWTorchVIP, and also our VIP members. And you can go VIP by going to pwtorch.com/govip. Details are up on the screen for our YouTube users, and it comes with a bunch of original podcasts that are exclusive to our VIP members on our VIP podcast feed, which is compatible with Spotify through Patreon and through the Apple native podcast app and thus CarPlay, through our main VIP membership and also Patreon, or directly through our main VIP site or directly through your Apple Podcast app. You can upgrade within that. Full details on all the different tiers and all the different benefits, including 35 years of archives of retro radio shows, podcasts, and newsletters at pwtorch.com/govip. Joel, we're going to get into plugging your AEW podcast a little bit later, but for people who don't stick around, to that point, just want to encourage you to search PWTorch in your podcast app to subscribe. There's a different show every day of the week on the PWTorch Daily Cast lineup. And when you search PWTorch, you'll see the PWTorch Daily Cast logo. Subscribe for free, and that includes the All Elite Conversation Club that drops once a week. Joel, what do you say we just get rolling here to more discussion on Dynamite?
Absolutely.
All right, tried to race through that stuff, but not quite as fast as Excalibur plugging Rampage and Collision. But I want to get to our video callers and more of our chat room conversation. We will start with Derek from Utah. Bring him into the show. Derek, welcome. Good to see you and talk to you again.
Yeah, just to piggyback and sound off about the blood and guts match, I agree with you guys. I thought the build going in was bad. It was quite poor, but I will give credit where credit is due. I do think that they told a pretty good story during the match. When people talk about wrestling psychology, I think that means different things to different people. But generally what I'm looking for in a match that I think makes the story work is you want to put heat on your heels. You want to build sympathy for your babyface team. You want a sense of jeopardy in the match. And then you want meaningful moments and transitions that kind of are the vehicle that carry the match forward. And I think that they did that pretty well in the match. The other thing I'll say about the match that I appreciate is even though the story going into the match I thought was shady, quite bad, I think coming out of the match, they put some more heat on Swerve and Hangman. They built kind of a sense of animosity between Hangman and Okada. And then they finalized the match between Jungle Jack Perry and Darby. So I think they did do some work to set up the pay-per-view that even though the match in and of itself was meaningless, I think coming out of it, there is some meaning and some importance by the results. And so I'll give them credit for that. My one question to you guys, because I thought this was kind of on the tip of my mind at the conclusion of the match, is I think the most meaningful part of the match where I really felt something is when you have the stare down and the showdown between Hangman and Swerve. I thought that was the climax of the match. And then I started thinking, but they're not wrestling each other at the pay-per-view.
Yep.
Danielson's wrestling Swerve.
Yep.
And I'm not saying that you can't kind of build two angles at the same time. I just think by doing that, knowing that the storytelling has not been perfect and has not been very cohesive over the last few years, now you're going to try to navigate two major programs at the same time with three talents. I think they created a much more difficult scenario than they needed to. So do you guys feel that same way, or do you think that it's not a big deal?
Well, I'll throw in Sadler's comment in the chat room, Sadler V3. Do you think this match spoiled the All-In main event? So much of this match was based around Hangman Swerve. I don't see Bryan Danielson beating Swerve now, since we should get Hangman Swerve again. Although they can do Hangman Swerve without a title. So that last part, I don't think really affects my opinion on what happens in that match. But, I mean, Derek, you're not alone. I mean, Joel, part of the price, I mean, can a champion should have more than one challenger coming at him at a time, but to have a match so intense, a rivalry so intense as Swerve Hangman, and have it re-amplified tonight. I mean, no question, Blood and Guts re-amplified it. Does that overshadow, or do they have time to make up for that in terms of Danielson going after the AEW World Title with this? And they did give it some time tonight. You know, we had the interview with Renee Paquette and then Jeff Jarrett coming in and trying to tell Danielson to kind of focus. So yeah, your thoughts on what Derek had to say, and also Sadler V3 in the chat.
Yeah, they did an excellent job of trying to hype up some other matches that are coming up down the road here, especially for All In. But it is certainly something to be said for that. that the one of the biggest feuds that they have going on right now is the continuation of what's been going on between Swerve and Hangman, and the main event of All In, the presumed main event for the world title, being Swerve versus Bryan Danielson. And we did get a little bit to hear from Bryan Danielson with Renee, and then Jeff Jarrett cut him off and, said he needs to really refocus things because Danielson, has not been about the championship. He's taking the conversation away from that a little bit. And so Jeff Jarrett being the voice of reason and making a couple appearances throughout the show in Nashville. And then they plugged that. You can see the rest of that on their YouTube page that would be uploaded later, the full interview with Danielson. So I'm curious to see what the full context of everything that he had to say with her was. But the real big thing that people want to see right now is the continuation of Swerve versus Hangman Page. And I think that you can have multiple challengers. You also had MJF calling out Swerve at the beginning of his promo at the beginning of the show. That's something a lot of people call for, is that everybody should be talking about the world championship and setting up different challengers for it. But you also have All Out as another pay-per-view that's going to be happening 2 weeks after All In at that Chicago show. So they're going to need to get some things fired up for that, so that we don't run into the same scenario that happened last year, where basically you had All In and then a week later you have All Out, and there's really nothing built up for that show. I think they announced maybe one match was like a Darby Allin versus Killswitch, and then everything else was just kind of a hodgepodge put together for that pay-per-view. And it ended up being a great show, but it didn't have the storylines and the heat from building things up in advance. So I could see a scenario here where, where Matthew keeps talking about the deal that he had with Hangman Page, and we don't necessarily know what that deal was or the stipulations of that. It seems that there's going to be something between Okada and Hangman Page that seems fitting for All In, but it could also be something where Hangman, if he protects them and works with them, that he's in line for a title shot, and that could come as soon as All Out as well.
So one thing to bring up too in the context of what we're saying is Hangman is obviously his own guy right now, and not cooperating with Matthew Jackson, who's threatening to fire him if he doesn't get in the ring. And so as we talk about the intensity of this feud, and some people in the chat are saying, hey, this is the match, and you're saying it, Joel, this is the match that people want to see. To me personally, I feel I've seen it. I feel like they're just sort of revving something up again as a reason to get somewhere else. And I'm not quite sure where that somewhere else is right now, because Swerve, and somebody asked this, I think in the fixed mailbag, maybe last week, does Swerve need to face an actual full-fledged heel? And if you have now Hangman fighting Swerve, but Hangman is fighting Swerve in the context of not being loyal to this, in theory, top heel group in the EVPs and their cohorts. I feel like now our loyalty is a little bit torn. We're like, Hangman's a badass, and he's getting revenge for Swerve invading his house. And I remember that happened, and Swerve hasn't really apologized. He just sort of tried to rationalize it. I'm not sure where the emotions are supposed to be, unless all you want to see is a bloody all-out brawl. I get Hangman being mad. I get Swerve wanting to fight to defend himself. But emotionally, just on a personal level, I feel like they fought it out. They've done it. It's going to be more of the same if they do it again. And I don't even know who I'm supposed to be rooting for, because now they've sort of switched roles. But we're not even sure who Hangman is at this point, other than he's so obsessed with Swerve. He's not aligned with the Elite, but he's not aligned with the Elite. So I just, emotionally, it's just not landing with me, unless the idea is the only thing that sells a match is two people who just want to tear into each other, and I want to watch them tear into each other again when there's not a novelty to it, because I don't think they can raise the stakes from what they previously did. That sounds a little bit like a rebuttal to you, Joel, so I'll throw to you. Derek, for people listening, is nodding along to me saying this, and I know there's some people in the chat who kind of are saying some other things. So, Joel, what do you say to that? I mean, I'm very open to a counter argument to this, or another way that you think other people are looking at this.
Yeah, I mean, they've had several matches with each other. They even had, I can't remember if it was a lights out match or just a one of their hardcore type matches that they had at I think it was Full Gear last year, where it was just dripping blood, into Hangman's mouth and all that, where you saw them just totally go back and forth at each other. But it just seems like that there is some unfinished business there, that Hangman was really wanting to go for that championship. And Swerve obviously was the guy who won out in that match. And then we didn't see Hangman for a while. So it even though they've faced each other several times, it still seems like there's a heat and hunger to see a continuation of that story, even though they haven't fully told, what are the motivations of Hangman Page other than him, getting angry and beating people down since he's returned.
What emotion do you think they're going for, Joel? Like who are we supposed to be rooting for and why?
I mean, you're supposed to be rooting for Swerve Strickland is the direction that they want you to go. Even though he's shown some heel tendencies in his promos, and Hangman Page is just this guy who's on a total rampage. But yeah, what throws a wrench into that is that he is not completely in alignment with the Elite, because they're building something with Okada, and we haven't fully fleshed out exactly what those motivations are or what that full story is going to be. They're just they're just setting up a match right now, and we're gonna have several more weeks of television to know where Hangman stands in all of this, because obviously the Elite lost and they're going to be upset about that, as Hangman being their last guy in this, and they're going to have some feelings about that with him, first of all, handcuffing Hangman or handcuffing Swerve to the cage, and Matthew was upset about that, and then both guys pretty much exiting themselves from the match. So certainly there's going to be some dissension there, to where people then may start to feel a little bit differently about Hangman Page. But right now he's getting heat when he comes out there. People are not totally cheering for Hangman, but things may change here with the fallout of this match.
I guess to me, like Hangman and Swerve being knocked out is a reference Stratego. And it's like when your number 3 knocks out a number 3. I don't know how many people play that game, but it got brought up recently in some show I was watching. And when a 3 knocks out a 3, it's mutual destruction, and both teams are equally powerful as a result afterwards. So I don't know that there's really a storyline for the Bucks to be upset. Hangman just took out Swerve, and so now it's still equal. It's just they're both subtracted from it. And this is why I wasn't crazy about Swerve and Hangman again, just because I feel like I've seen it before, and I don't think the story supports it, because we're supposed to, as you said, Joel, we're supposed to be rooting for Swerve at this point, but he's the one who did the home invasion, and Hangman isn't aligned with the Elite, and he just I don't know. I'm still, the emotions aren't landing unless all you're wrapped up in is these two hate each other, and I want to see people who hate each other fight, but then it lacks the novelty. I'm repeating myself now. Derek, I want to go back to you.
Well, I think I agree with Joel when he says there's unfinished business, but when there's unfinished business, that doesn't mean that you have to solve it right now. I think it's more effective if you make people wait for it. Because I often think when you have a feud, what's the motivation? Sometimes it's a title or competitiveness. I would say the central theme in this rivalry is hate. The way they built it on television, hate is a strong word, but it really does seem like they hate each other. When you invade someone's home and threaten their child, that is a reason to hate somebody. And when you saw the consequence of the hate in the last match they had at Full Gear, they were trying to kill each other and drinking each other's blood. So where do you go from that? Now you're going to have a normal match, or if you do have another hardcore match, now you're just going to have to escalate that to a point which I don't think is the best way, or maybe appropriate for your world heavyweight champion, or when the belt's on the line. So I still, part of me wants to see Hangman and Swerve, but part of me says, wait 2 or 3 years, let the unfinished business simmer, knowing that people will remember it when you bring it back. That would make it more effective, especially when the characters have went through some kind of a journey where they're not the same people.
Yeah.
So that's the way I see that. I would like the focus to be on Danielson and Swerve, knowing that it's going to be the biggest crowd you're going to play in front of in a year, with Danielson, who is a legacy competitor, and this is kind of his final stand. And so put all your attention on that, because I think it deserves it, and I think he deserves it. Yeah. Diverting the attention on a side feud that will pay off maybe in 2 weeks, I don't think that's necessary unless you have all your ducks in a row. And I don't think they've had all their ducks in a row when it comes to storytelling over the last few years. So why muddy the waters? Keep them clean, keep them clear, and keep the direction clean and clear. I think that's more effective. So,
yeah. Joel, do you want to add anything to that? We both talked since you did.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it seems that they got some things that they're trying to set up to, could be further down the road. But I agree that we need to be focusing more on Bryan Danielson. If that's the focus right now, things need to really start heating up there. And we just got a little sprinkle of a promo tonight with Renee. Like I said, that there's going to be more of that stuff on YouTube. But I think going forward that, Hangman should probably go into another direction right now that he's gotten a little bit of taste of getting some revenge back on Swerve. He got to beat him with the belt and attack him while he was attached to the cage. And then also they went through the side of the stage there. That I think that the focus needs to come back onto Bryan Danielson and his story. But I still think that there's going to be something going on between the Elite and Hangman Page to where he's going to continue to separate himself.
All right, very good. Ramen Noodle says, Hangman can't just move on while Swerve is getting the spotlight. I love that he's so consumed and he feels the whole world is crazy. I think this counts as storytelling. That was in response to someone else in the chat saying, AEW doesn't tell stories. I think Azan said building up matches is an AEW style. Let it be. Someone else mentioned, I believe, storytelling. So anyway, we've got more chat comments on this, but not related at this specific point. And I think we all kind of made our argument. So Derek, back to you if you want to move on to something else.
Yeah, this different topic. And I'm just going to say it mean. Britt Baker sucks, and she's still pretty bad in the ring. And I think why I mention it is because she doesn't need to be. I have no idea who told her that she should be a technical wrestler, because when she tries to do those transitions and be a technical wrestler, that's just not her strength, and it looks really bad. And so I think she cut the promo. Everyone was really excited to see her, but boy, did she just throw water on the fire today of me wanting to see her wrestle Mercedes just by not being very good in the ring. And maybe Mercedes will be able to pull something out of her. But boy, when I watch her wrestle, I'm just like, why do you choose to wrestle a style that you're not good at?
Well, this is someone who did super kicks for a couple years and sorry, Britt, but it was like the worst super kicks in the business. So Adam Cole did it, so she did it. But I mean, at some point you got to watch your match back or ask for feedback and play to your strengths. Now, Derek, I know I jumped in, but I interrupted you. But I think there was enough good to this match to make up for quite a bit of what you're pointing out. That is also the truth. There was an intensity, and Sheeta's good, and I thought there were some good exchanges. But you're making faces as I say this. But there was time after time after time. There was awkwardness in setting up spots too. Derek, go ahead and push back on me saying there was some good to this, and then I'll throw to Joel for his take.
I think when you say that there was good to it, this is kind of always what I'm looking for. Even if your 2 or 3 transitions were clean, if at the end of that you completely screw up the spot, the transitions that were good don't matter because they were offset by something clumsy. And to me, that's her string of wrestling is there's like a good exchange in there, but it's in this big messy thing where she's doing weird rolls and missing the person's arm, and then a bad strike at the end of a sequence where you're like, why'd you even do the sequence if you were going to miss the kick and slap your leg? That doesn't make it clean. And so to be nicer to Britt, I'll switch the topic.
Well, let me get Joel's thoughts on that match before you do that, Derek. Just Joel, what do you have any want to come to a defense or frame the match a little differently? Then I'll throw it back to Derek.
Yeah, I can't disagree too much with Derek on that. I mean, my notes were that this was a really clunky match. Obviously, a lot of ring rust. If I'm to give some slack to Britt on this, that she hasn't had a match, since I believe they said September of last year. So there's quite a bit of time in between that where she hasn't had any time. Maybe she's had some practice ring time. Off camera, working on this stuff, but certainly in front of the crowd, she's a very charismatic person. She's a popular personality. But when she got in the ring and especially against Hikaru Shida, who's not on TV all the time. Yes, she's a very good wrestler, but they didn't have the chemistry here. I would have liked to have seen her go against somebody who's just a straight up heel, to where you didn't have that mixed reaction to start the match, where Hikaru Shida was trying to play a little bit more heel as things went on there, but the chemistry just wasn't there, and it just was clunky. Yeah, doing all those rolls and stuff just did not look good, to where, yeah, I wonder if this did throw some cold water onto the match that she's having with Mercedes. But I did like how the segment ended up with Mercedes's attitude, just her in short spurts, works well for me versus the long promos, and then the debut of Camille, I think, is a good pairing with her.
So a couple chat room comments, then I'll throw back to you, Derek. Box of Chocolates and Zombie says, Britt has heart. She's AEW original. Even though when she's not the smoothest in the ring, she has a certain vibe about her when she is on TV. Zahn says Britt Baker is not good in the ring. And Sadler says optimistically, Mercedes can carry her. That's her strongest attribute as a wrestler. Ramen Noodle says, let us all hope Britt is just Jamie Hayter's heater. That's a person I want to see face Mercedes. And then Sadler version 3 says, can we blame Russ for this match? I don't think Britt is great in the ring, but she can usually produce with someone better than her, which Shida is. So Derek, back to you. You can respond to any of that or move on to whatever you're going to say.
And I'm not saying she's not a hopeless cause. I'm just saying play to your strengths. And if those aren't her strengths and those are the moves that don't look good, I have no idea why you would do them on live TV. With that said, I did like the pairing of Camille and Mercedes. And I think that now that Camille can kind of be the heater for Mercedes, that brings a different element to the match with Mercedes and Dr. Britt Baker, which, when you have that gaga going out on the outside of the ring, once again, you don't have to do all the technical stuff. You can focus on what you're good at, which is her charisma, her personality, and storytelling. And then you don't have to do clever, crafty exchanges that you don't look like an athlete when you do. So that's what I'll leave you guys with. I always enjoy listening to your show, and thanks for listening to my rambling.
Thank you, Derek. Appreciate your contributions, and you always bring the opinions. Appreciate it. Joel, anything you want to add to that in terms of turning the page to Mercedes Britt now?
Yeah, I think that adding Camille to this just adds another dynamic where they can tell some different aspects of the story versus what we just had Britt Baker showing up. Now it's just lost a little bit of that shine now that we've seen her a few more times, and they've done her being in the crowd, attacking Mercedes. So this just adds a little bit more to that, and then also it leads to more anticipation of seeing Jamie Hayter showing up at some point as well. So I like that they're adding more layers to this match and trying to build more of a story. But certainly, I'd like to see Britt Baker get some more ring time and just finding the right opponents, and like Derek said, playing to her strengths, which you would think that would have happened here, being her first match back, which was quite the disappointment.
We'll go to Mike and Hershey, our next video caller, in just a moment. I want to go back to a couple comments before they run too far off the screen on Blood and Guts. We'll start with the super chat. Thank you, Box of Chocolates and Zombies, for the super chat. You go first here. The Blood and Guts main event had a lot of great spots, but the ending felt messed up. This was my least favorite Blood and Guts match. I also call on anyone who is watching live to drop a super chat. No guilt if you don't, but obviously we encourage that. That's kind of part of the setup here. So we appreciate those who drop a little bit in the tip chart to get prominent placement. Then let's see. I wanted to go a different direction to a different chat. Here we go. Corey Dallas Standing says, I was entertained enough for a weekly wrestling show, but it just felt like a random spot match to me. Not sure why Darby is so angry that he would take it to that level. I missed or forgot something. And then did have someone chime in. Mr. Grimmer says Darby was angry because they hanged him. It had a storyline backing in that sense, but you're still, I don't know. I mean, it was hanging upside down. So I guess maybe setting someone on fire with no fire extinguishers nearby is still taking it to the next level. Let's see. think there was another one I wanted to grab onto here about blood and guts. Oh, yeah, Lady B had a great one. This is what I'm looking for. One of my favorite tweets of tonight was Renee Paquette posting during Blood and Guts, just really grateful my husband isn't in this match. So that's good.
Yeah.
And Milo Erickson said, has every Blood and Guts match ended the same way? Someone quits to save their friend. Moxley did it last year to save Yuta. Sammy tried to save Jericho from getting thrown off the roof. And tonight. So a good point on that. Is that a problem, Joel?
I mean, it's become trite where we see this very similar pattern of the surrender of trying to stop somebody from doing a big spot, and sometimes they go through with it still, sometimes they don't when you can't do it in this case. So it has been overdone, and like I said, I think that there are more creative ways to have finishes to these matches than we've seen.
Another one, Dougie Doug said, I owe Mox an apology for always assuming cringy staple gun spots or him exercising his creative freedom. I could have done without that. What do you think of the parade of staple gun shots, including it being enough to take Okada out of the match? A lot of people commenting on Okada being a bit of a fish out of water on this one.
Yeah, as if Swerve needs any more scars on his back after that match that he had in Lucha Underground, which was the big hardcore match that people were talking about leading up into this. I mean, the staple gun, it's it's a relatively, I guess, safe spot. It obviously doesn't feel good to do that, but they can do that. It's the visual of it. I think the spot worked where Okada, he does the middle finger and Swerve goes right for the staple gun on the middle finger there. I mean, it's it works for me, and I think it works as a visual for the crowd.
Yeah. All right, a couple more here. 27 Newsman says regarding Okada's a fish out of water. There's where I got that. Not a hair on his head messed up. A staple to the finger took him out. And Darrell Freeman says, I will say that Nakamura booking and his work has been 10 times better than Okada's run as of today. So, I mean, still room for Okada to get more serious. And Chris Johnson in the chat says, agree, Darrell. Everything Okada does in the ring looks slow, careful, and weak as puppy piss. I don't think I've heard that phrase before, puppy piss.
Wow.
Puppy piss being weak. So, yeah, I mean, Joel, did Okada stand out to you, or do you think he was moving around being careful and that this isn't really his thing?
His style in AEW just has not meshed well at this point. I mean, he is the long form 25, 30-minute match wrestler, and we knew that from seeing him in New Japan, and him trying to move into this really fast-paced spot type style in AEW it's not worked out very well. It seems like a lot of times he's protecting himself. He falls into the background a lot of time. I think that the personality and the way that he's carried his character has been awfully disappointing. That he has resigned himself to be more of this, go for more of the comedy spots, the middle finger, saying bitch. And I think for what people have known and come to expect from us, appointment, and the thing that people thought that they'd be able to carry their hat on with him would be the in-ring style. And certainly he is not a hardcore wrestler by any stretch of the imagination, but this, he was just another guy in this match. And really the only thing to look forward to with him is, hopefully they can build up some big matches where we can see him do his type of style and he can get over that way. And so I have some excitement for the potential possibility of him going up against Hangman Page and reigniting what they had in a match in the G1 Climax many years ago that really put Hangman on the map. And so there's some to call back to with that. But yeah, Okada has just to this point been very much a disappointment.
Mike Myers said, why are you bringing puppy piss into this? And Chris Johnson says, sorry, Mike Myers, it's a thing we say in East Texas. So there we go. It's a thing. Derek, who's just with us, did add in the chat. As I've said before, it's sad seeing that the biggest Japanese superstar in the last 15 years is now the fourth most important person in a stable that is floundering. So yeah, anyway, all right, let's get to our next video caller here. And Mike in Hershey is up. Mike, welcome. Good to see you. Good to talk to you.
Hey, good to see you guys. Thanks for chatting here tonight. So that's actually that was my comment early on, the Okada being fish out of water. So I guess on the chat there, I'm 27 Newsman. So that's
okay. Good to know.
So in case you know that. All right. Anyway, so yeah, you guys covered it. Hey, this is the funny thing. I don't know what puppy piss is, but I'm going to bank that one and maybe use it at sometime. But what I was thinking when I was watching Okada was, number one, I think I've mentioned this before, but I don't really follow All Japan or New Japan, excuse me. So, I know who he is. I'm aware of him. I know the Omega match and all that stuff with the, 7 stars and all the history there. But this is my first time really seeing him, on the big stage, like with any frequency. So, I'm kind of unimpressed by him. I mean, I think he's cool. I think there's potential there. But this match was just like, I'm like, what is this guy doing in here? Everything he did was like, what it reminded me of, Wade, is like when if you ever seen 2 kids like wrestling on a trampoline and they kind of like bounce off the side of the trampoline and then slowly like roll and it was almost at the point where he was like, I want to be part of this match, but I don't really want to get too many of those thumbtacks on me. So he did this like ginger little roll. Then he was like laying in the background for a while, and then it was a good spot. I mean, I don't want to be too negative because I enjoyed the blood and guts match, but the middle finger thing was, it's like that's his thing, and it was a good spot. They planned that out. Thought that was pretty cool. But I just thought that, man, it's not the match we're trying to feature this guy, and like Derek said, it's just not the match for him.
Yeah, Sadler version V3 says, by the way, I don't know if you're connected to listening to us through your earbuds because we're hearing feedback, Mike.
Okay.
When I talk, we're through your speaker. So I don't know if you want to reset it. Is the sound coming through your earbuds or not? Are you?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just mute you when you're not talking. That'll solve it too. So Sadler version 3 says, Okada's being booked how washed up Vince would book him, LOL. Stereotypical comedic Japanese character. And Box of Chocolates with another super chat says, my wife walked in when they were using staple guns. Her response was nasty and not in a good way. So Mike, back to you.
Yeah. So just one other thing, I'll move on from blood and guts because you guys said more than I think I could say about it tonight. But the Okada part was just that it was just a side thing. I like the match. So the couple of things, one of the things that happened tonight was we got a new belt. We got another new belt in AEW. Whether it's a new belt or a retooled belt, I kind of thought it was going to be another version of the Triple B, I guess, but it turned out to be something completely different. So what do you guys think of the American Championship?
Joel?
It is another belt. Thankfully, it's not a belt that's being recognized in addition to the international championship. So, it's MJF's way of trying to get some more heel heat on himself, and it will work. When he's at All In, trying to hold up the American belt versus the international belt. So I wasn't too bothered by it. MJF always is doing things his way by having his custom championship belt. So I didn't think it was the worst thing in the world to see it, but go ahead.
What I wonder too is like it didn't. I don't know if this is their attempt to actually just get rid of international because it sounds too close to world and they want to establish it's a secondary belt, which seems weird that MJF would voluntarily do that to take a belt that represents multi-nations, thus international, and be the one who says, no, let's narrow it down to just America. And if he has a chance to rename a belt, why America? Why not return to All Atlantic? Because, Long Island, it's near the Atlantic. Or just call it the Long Island Championship. Or, I don't know. It doesn't feel like something MJF would do. It feels like it's their escape hatch from having international be a title for no good reason. I don't think American is any better or worse. It's still another belt. But now, not only do you have MJF with the belt he introduced, but then Ospreay took his belt back. And it's almost parody. I mean, at this point, if someone said that's what they're going to do, you would be like, okay, now you're just making fun of Tony Khan and I'm sympathetic with him. He'd never do something like that. And then here we are doing it, not to mention Willow showing up with another belt also. So anyway, it's just a little bit weird to me. And also this idea that if you win a championship, you just get to have another belt commissioned and say, this is the belt. Like, there's too many things they do just for the punchline without any sort of foundational logic to it. Like Ospreay leaning at a tire when no one leans at their front tire. When I get in a car, I don't lean down at the front tire. Maybe I missed something to explain it. And then he acted surprised there's a knife in the tire. Like, why did you stop and lean down at the tire before noticing it was slashed? And so multiple things about that were dumb. I'll probably keep going back to it. Mike, back to you. Any additional thoughts or any other topics? Oh, by muting you, Mike, I'm going to mute you now. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I don't know. There's like, I'm not sure if it's side plates or if it's built into the American Championship. It said something. Did anyone pick up what they said? I couldn't see it on TV. It said something. I don't know if it was
There's
MJF
something
specific.
customized. Yeah, I think
Okay.
I think it was. I don't remember either. But I think there was something.
Okay. Well, we knew. Yeah. So I'm going to transition from that topic into another topic, because there was with the throwing of the belt into the trash can tonight, it was somewhat of a WCW throwback, just it made me think of Medusa, right? But there was another segment tonight which made me think of old school WCW, and it was the Chris Jericho Suzuki match, the Learning Tree, where if you remember Chris Jericho, well, this was first of all, so it was a chop fest, right? So it was chop 100 times, and then they went to commercial, and when they came back, they were still chopping, right? So it just reminded me of Jericho reading his 1,000 holds, going to commercial, coming back, and he's still reading them. And I don't know if that was a fan. I kind of find that, this may not be the best thing ever, but I do find the Learning Tree a guilty pleasure. So your reaction to that, and just one other thing I wanted to say before I go, but I'll see what you guys had to say about that.
Cool. Yep. So, Joel, the Chop Fest. I actually thought the announcers helped the match, because I think it's the type of thing that some people are just going to love and eat up, and other people are going to go, this is like the dumbest thing I've ever seen. They're just standing there letting them chop each other, and Jericho's getting bloody. They're not actually trying to win a match or do any of the moves. But I think it was Excalibur who said, this is just two egos who don't want to give in and flinch and show pain. It probably is the record for the most chops thrown before any other variation of a move was done or a bump was taken. I'm genuinely curious how that played with a larger audience watching it. If they felt like this is compelling, or it's comedy, or it's novel, I can't take my eyes off it, or this is stupid and I feel like I don't know that secret clubhouse handshake to understand why they're doing this. Joel, what was your thoughts watching it?
Yeah, I hate to keep using that term, but I mean, this was like the sickos type match of, wouldn't it be great if these two guys go back and forth, doing the chops and going on forever and ever and ever doing that, to the point where Jericho's chest was getting bloody. And, I think there is some, I don't know. I wouldn't say like it was super entertaining, but yeah, there was a guilty pleasure to watching that, just see how long these guys will go for this. But I would imagine that for someone who's not the ardent fan, that this probably got pretty tiring or boring, or they just kind of thought it was ridiculous. I'll move on to go watching something else, because there wasn't really a whole lot else to the match. I mean, it was an FTW championship match, which typically has the gimmicks and all the weapons and all that stuff, which they had to save for the blood and gut show. So you weren't going to get a whole lot of that in this match, that they had to find other ways around that. And eventually you had Suzuki using the chair to take out Jericho's hand, and it ended pretty quickly after that. After a few moves, then you had the juice effect, which Suzuki took the pin and then no sold it and got right back up and did the Gotch style pile driver. I didn't like the match overall, but like I said, there was some of the intrigue to see how long they'll go with the chops, but it's on the lower grade of AEW matches for sure.
And to me, I'm surprised watching what they did, that they didn't just put this on first. You've got President Biden announcing, on camera for the first time, that he's not seeking re-election, something presidents rarely do. Johnson did it, and a lot of people are watching that. And so I'm curious how much of a dent the first, 10 minutes, give or take, took out of it. And there's, going to be post analysis of it. So to me, that's kind of a match where it's sort of, as Tony might say, for the sickos, the people who are going to be like, I'll just look at my phone and get a summary of what Biden said. I don't need to watch history in the making with my own eyes, live as it happens. And so just do a chop fest as a gimmicky thing, and then let MJF have the stage to himself, not competing with President Biden. That would be how I would have rearranged the show a little bit. And I would have been actually a little bit warmer to this match if it sort of felt like, yeah, we're just going to kind of chop each other until Biden is done announcing one of the most historic announcements that can be made by a president, although obviously it's a little anticlimactic since he released a statement Sunday. So anyway, I just throw that out there. I would have led with the chop fest for the sickos, and then basically had them chop until Biden stopped talking. And it could have looked at it as, well, that's what it was, all about.
Yeah.
All Mike, I'll throw back to you.
Yeah, so I didn't really care for the match either. I guess that's what I should say. Is like I was just commenting on it because I thought it was funny, the fact that they were chopping through the commercial. Like literally, if you watch through the commercial, picture in picture, it was just more chop. Yeah, it was great. So the other thing is just reacting to what Derek said. Britt Baker. I mean, you guys talked about it, but like, here's the thing about Britt. Like, I don't notice that. There are a lot of AEW wrestlers that could probably benefit from a different style of shooting their matches. I mean, there's a lot of air in between moves and things like that get caught on camera. I think it's just and it's a cool production style that they have. It's a little more, down and dirty than as slick as WWE is, for instance. So, there's a lot of wrestlers that probably look a little worse, and she's probably not benefiting from that, maybe having a little bit of ring rust. So I'm willing to, give her a pass on that kind of thing, because with Britt, compared to a lot of other AEW talent, just my opinion, of course, but I feel like when she comes out, like, you're seeing somebody. I feel like from her ring gear to her, the charisma, just I don't know what else you want to say. The fact she's just when she comes, I'm a fan. I think, I don't know, maybe it's because I'm from Pennsylvania, but I'm a Brit fan, and we'll give her a little bit of leeway. And I do still think that you've got this AEW original, and you've got this, someone who slid over from another company as a major star, and they're going to collide, and that's still a big match to me. So looking forward to that, and I'll give them the benefit of the doubt that they're gonna get it together by that point. So guys, it's all I had, and thanks for all the podcasts and entertainment throughout the week. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike. Always great talking with you. Thanks for calling. Call again. All right. So we have a few comments in the chat room related to some of the things we just said. Chris Johnson says, I only watched Dynamite to get to the post show with Wade. If not for the post show commentary, I would have turned it off during the Suzuki match. That is harsh review of that match. Was there another comment on this? No. So then we have a bunch of comments on the new title. I'll just roll through them here. Lady B says, I'm still laughing at the red, white, and blue streamer cannons pretty much missing MJF when it went off. And then we have Ramen Noodle saying MJF has used the faux patriotism gimmick before, and it'll play well in London. My counter to that is MJF's trying to be a heel. And are Americans really going to be booing MJF because he's trying to get under Will Ospreay's skin by doing a patriot gimmick by naming a belt after the country that most AEW viewers are from? It, like, to me, given the baggage of MJF a little bit over the past couple of years, I think I would try to do things a little bit straightforward. Ramen Noodle Lads, Will Ospreay renamed the US Championship to the UK Championship in New Japan too, right? I might be a little bit off. So if AEW wants to tell a story like that, they need to tell it in the canon of AEW. GWF ESPN 1992 says the Gotti belt rebrand by MJF was an overbearing Cody move in a good way. And Corey Dallas Standing says the country that matters, I think, is what MJF is going for there. And then I think finally here, Sadler version 3 says the belt looked too legit to be a temporary gimmick. If it had the Burberry straps like his AEW belt, I'd think it was temporary. Joel, do you think they stick with it long term, or is this a belt that is going to end up in MJF's trophy case, within weeks or months?
I mean, it would be hard for Ospreay to then come back to the United States on the next Dynamite if he is to win the championship and then say, hey, I'm getting rid of this American belt and I'm going back to the international belt and throwing away the red, white, and blue strap. So for me, it's too early. It's too early to tell. I was not expecting him to have, I was thinking that they could do something that's more MJF themed when he had his own strap on the AEW World Championship. I wasn't expecting a full rebrand to an American title. And I think you made a good case that, maybe this, it's possible that this is, more of a long-term thing of switching from the international to the U.S. championship because of international could be too close to world. So to me, it's just too early to tell at this point, but it's just very much a short-term thinking of, hey, once we get to, because there's 4 more Dynamites, one of them's going to be in Wales, the other, and then we're at All In, that, that's where the heat's going to be, is putting a lot of the emphasis on the America stuff instead of the international thinking that that's going to play really well to the crowd. And I think it will, especially against Ospreay. The dynamic of it helps a lot, more so than just, making it the American belt.
Does it play well with American fans? Can MJF be obnoxious enough that fans in America buying this on pay-per-view are going to be rooting against a belt named after America because they're siding with Ospreay because MJF has taken international away and made it American? Like, I just think it's a bit of a heavy lift and a little convoluted. And if it's based on stuff in the past, then it's, again, the secret clubhouse handshake that's going to make other people feel like they're catching up on something. And the story isn't told for them, it's told for other people. So again, to me, MJF, keep things simple or make it broad stroke obvious. Like, I don't want to fix this by making it slapstick, but like what crossed my mind is make a belt that is so gaudy. It's so MJF. It's bigger than the old Mid-South title before they turned into the OWF, which was like the Bill Watts' belt in the mid-'80s, the biggest championship, the North American title. Make it gigantic. Have MJF's face on it. The Burberry scarf as the strap behind it. Like, make it kind of like what they were going for in that weird Daniel Bryan thing with the Eco belt, as opposed to just making it look like, oh, this is something they might stick with. So it leads to a discussion like we're having here, which is this a heelish move or just a way to change the name of the belt? And they decided to tell a little convoluted story to get there. There's time, like you said, to make this make sense. It will get MJF heat in the UK, but I mean, I don't think, was it, who was it on Collision who came out and insulted the Texas Rangers? Like, you're on national television. Now AEW's international. Let's keep things away from local angles where a lot of people are going to be like, yeah, I don't care about the Texas Rangers. So I'm on the side. I think it was Tony Nese. I'm on his side. Anyway, couple chat room comments. Bandit Jacob says, to which Chris Johnson says, once a belt enters AEW, it's here for good. Ramen noodle jokes that Tony must have bought all these belts in bulk years ago. All right. Oh, there's one other comment on the chops I want to sneak in. This is what I was looking for earlier. Bandit Jacob says, I don't care for matches with only chops, but if it gets a crowd into it, I'm happy. And that's the thing. Sometimes something isn't for you specifically, but if the crowd is reacting to it, it can elevate it. I mean, there's something like, you don't want something going on that you're not into and the crowd also isn't into it, but it's way more palatable to watch something if you're going, this isn't really for me, but it's really entertaining watching other people be super into it. Like, so that can elevate it too. All right. So let's bring Rude Dog into the conversation here. Rude Dog, welcome. Good to see you. You've got your Saber shirt on. Gotta cover that. Yep. Cool.
Yeah. This is from the match I saw him in Japan against Ishii for Wrestle Kingdom 13. So yeah, that was the end of the Bullet Club as we knew it before they went to AEW. So that's what I'm wearing.
Sweet. So what do you think of Dynamite tonight?
I thought it was fairly entertaining, but I know you talked a lot about the Blood and Guts match, but I just kind of want to know what you think about like that concept of a match in general. Like, I mean, to me, it's never really hit. Like, I mean, whether it be in Jim Crockett Promotions or WCW, NXT, WWE, or AEW, I mean, the main reason, like, it just seems like a lot of waiting around. Like, you know, you can't really start the match till everyone is in the ring, supposedly. And so what do you think about the format of that match? And does it translate now in, like, primetime TV?
Joel? Well, yeah, I mean, that last comment by Rude Dog is interesting. Like, on pay-per-view, building up to a big feud, you pull it out when you feature it as a main event of a pay-per-view when there's a feud that calls for it, as opposed to it being a calendar event. But then you add the layer to it, beyond our criticism earlier that maybe it didn't feel like there were two cohesive teams with real stakes, and instead some individual feuds, which was underlined in the Babyface's pre-match promo. What about featuring something like this on TV? I mean, is this Tony Khan trying to basically put the shock paddles to the chest of diminishing AEW Dynamite viewership by going, look at the differentiation between us and what WWE does. It can be a positive because, like he says, we're booking for the sickos. But it also can be a turnoff or feel like it's too much, whatever. Yeah. So what do you think, Joel?
Yeah. I mean, the way that they built to these matches, this comes around a similar time of year. They don't have a designated week for this, but it's typically around June, July, the summertime that they have these on their calendar. And certainly it seems like a jolt into Dynamite to try and continue the forward momentum that they had. They had an uptick in the ratings last week, and of course they're trying to keep boosting this as negotiations continue on, for their television rights, that they want to show that, hey, we are able to pull some different levers and boost up our viewership for this type of show. And I just think that the way that they've built up Blood and Guts as just, hey, here's just a destination, it's announced, especially this year, how it was, hey, we're going to have Blood and Guts tickets go on sale. We're going to be in Nashville in July. And, we'll announce some, week by week, we'll announce some of the participants that are going to be in this match. That aspect of it just really doesn't work for me. That I think you need to set it up in such a way where you plan this out, that you have these two factions. And they've done some of this in the past where they've had two groups that, leads to a grudge match, a blow off that it leads to the Blood and Guts, but they didn't do that in this case. And ultimately, just as a match itself, I'm seeing Ramen Noodle says this as well. And this was my thought, is that it just feels like it's a video game match where you're inserting a lot of people, you do some spots, you grab some stuff from under the ring, you go through some tables, you put Okata in the match, to something that you wouldn't typically see in this type of match type. It just is not, it's not my favorite seeing this. I'm not the biggest hardcore wrestling fan. But this really did just kind of feel like a fantasy wrestling, put some guys in a match there. You got some good personalities with it. I don't have the history of watching, the original War Games matches and knowing how that felt watching the WCW version of that. I've just seen other companies do their retreads. TNA had the Lethal Lockdown version of it, which never resonated with me or many people at all. Mm-hmm. And then you had the War Games version that WWE has tried to reignite, which obviously can't go to the lengths of danger and violence that AEW can do. So AEW can do the match type a bit more justice by living up to that, of having this really be something dangerous and different than your regular matchup. But still, it's just a lot of spots in there without the build up that you would hope for this type of match.
Yeah. Ramen Noodle said it feels like a pay-per-view match or a video game match. And then he adds, any older fans know what kind of build went into the OG War Games match? Was it stable versus stable, or a series of singles feuds converging? The original match just predated by a little bit my launch of the Pro Wrestling Torch newsletter. It was in July 1987, and it was a match designed for the Four Horsemen to have it was, Dusty Rhodes came up with the concept, and it was the Four Horsemen, including, by the way, J.J. Dillon, who the original War Games had managers who would take the fall, which can you imagine if, I'm trying to Stokely and I don't know, two Brandon Cutler were in this. Like, it would just, Prince Nana and Brandon Cutler are in it, and one of them does the job. Like, that would, people would be rioting in the streets over that. But it was cohesive. I mean, it was Road Warriors, Dusty, Nikita, and then Paul Ellering, speaking of managers, against the Four Horsemen. So there was this cohesive heel group, and it had, more of a sense of being a blow off of the top baby faces against this top heel group, for sure. And they went back to it, when they did it again. So trying to think, they even did it at some house shows back in the day. But yeah, it was a return theme. Lex Luger was added to the next year, to the next pay-per-view presentation. Anyway, Rude Dog, I'll throw back to you.
Well, there was so much going on in this match. I mean, and Jeff Jarrett ended up being involved. Do you think he was the agent for this match? Like, it was just like, wow.
Yeah, Jeff's been pretty present lately. I mean, Jeff does good work. I just don't know if we need this, if it's helpful to have this much of him in 2024 as part of the AEW brand. I mean, it's doing good work. I mean, his style of match, he does really well. And when he was wrestling a lot, it was like, there's some things he could teach wrestlers about getting a lot out of little, kind of the Jerry Lawler school, not coincidentally, of getting the most out of the minimum physical exertion, which is something Jerry takes great pride in. Not everybody has the charisma skill set that Lawler does, both on the mic and in the ring, to get away with that. But there's a lot of Jeff Jarrett, Joel, in AEW, more than I think people anticipated. A lot of praise for the promo he cut on Owen Hart. I'm not sure that means he should have been in the tournament. People can, debate that. It's what's done is done. But yeah, having him be the sage speaking to Danielson and then coming out to ringside in this main event. What do you feel about his involvement?
Jeff, in the promotions that he's been in, has always seemed to find his way into the circles of influence, and gotten himself into positions that you just wouldn't have thought he would. And certainly he's a great talker behind the scenes with people. He does have a good wrestling mind for things. So maybe he is somebody that Tony is leaning a little bit more on. I have no idea if he was an agent for this match or whatnot, but certainly you got him twice on the show with the Nashville connection of things. You had to have the guitar spot. It seems like that's standard when being in Nashville. But he just, I get that there is the connection between Owen Hart and Jeff Jarrett, but certainly for fans like myself, where you didn't live through that period, it's just not something that immediately comes to mind for people. So it seems like more of a favor to Jeff to put him on TV, having more of that alliance. Where it's just not a tag team that I associate with each other or know much about their friendship. And so having him as the guy who's comes to Danielson, tells him he needs to be more focused on the title because of how much this tournament means to Jeff personally, felt quite out of place, where he comes in, he sits down for just a moment and then gets up and leaves from there. Was a bit awkward. And then his involvement at the end of the match, I have, as we all do, the issues of, the outside involvement, the overbooking of these big gimmick matches. But if you're going to give Jeff a spot to be on this Nashville show, it's not the worst thing ever for him to give a guitar shot to Brandon Cutler.
Don't book to the city when you're a national TV show unless it's like really, really, really a top star. Like I don't know. You're going to get it, I don't know. And not really how many AEW fans are even at this point all that connected to Jeff Jarrett's Nashville history. Maybe a lot. Maybe I'm underestimating it. But like I said, he's doing good enough work, but he's also got the stench of a lot of, booking himself the way he did in TNA when he really was like the head promoter booker, and then being part of some just awful WCW stuff. And I don't know. It feels weird. I hope if he's the agent, he would not Billy Gunn himself into the circumstance. It would be someone else pushing him in because they're the agent for the match. It would be self-serving if you're an agent of some type and doing it. So anyway, Chris Johnson added in the chat, I like this Jeff Jarrett better than crazy heel stable Jeff Jarrett doing concession stand matches. Yeah, but we shouldn't. The lesser of two bads doesn't mean it should get endorsed either. But, anyway, Rude Dog, back to you.
So, there wasn't really like a real reason for this match to happen whatsoever. So it seems like near the end, the whole thing was just to have Darby Allin versus the Scapegoat match at All In. Do you agree with that?
It's going to lead to that, but it plays into the idea that this was some separate feuds, patched together because on the calendar we want to do blood and guts and we want to pop a rating. Joel, anything quick on that?
No, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah. Ramen Noodle says Tony Khan books for the live crowd. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but that's his philosophy. And I would just say, don't, pick your spots, be discerning. Is that the right word for that? Pick your spots and don't do it every time. You don't want to inject somebody who just because of the city you're in and book to that. Same thing with playing to local sports teams. Sometimes the wrestler being from there isn't a reason to build a major angle or a TV show or even a spot in a match around it. In the right context, it's harmless, but when it's part of main event, a big annual concept match, you know, I don't know that Nashville, and there's no reason Jarrett would be more likely to help out just because of the city that they're in. It doesn't even make storyline sense. All right, Rude Dog, back to you.
All right, so a different topic. Mariah May continues to seem like a star to me.
Mhm.
Do you think she will win the AEW Women's Championship at All In? And if so, do you think she can be a top star in AEW?
What do you think, Joel?
Yeah, I think that there, I don't know how much more legs there is to the Timeless Tony Storm gimmick after the match between the two. That it certainly seems like Mariah May is on this ascension right now. I think AEW is recognizing that and has known that since they've acquired her and put her in this position to get this rub with Tony Storm by building in a very unique way of having this storyline that they've had in mind where eventually these two were going to go against each other. And I think that Mariah has proven herself in the ring, that she can deliver on another level that most of their roster cannot. And so I would like to see her have a run as their top champion. And, maybe Tony Storm goes away for a little bit. She can come back at another time. But I also thought on this show in particular, with so much them trying to cram so much into this, and you have the blood and guts stipulation, that I would have liked to have seen Tony wait maybe another week or two before she makes her return against Mariah May. That I would have liked to see Mariah May just continue some domination and get to know her as her new glamour character. I know that the promo last week didn't land super well with a lot of the cadence, and there wasn't a ton of substance to what she had to say, but I would have liked to have seen her have another match here. You can do the tease of Tony Storm. And then I think it could have been a much bigger deal on another show in a different spot, having Tony doing that return.
I think Tony Storm's gimmick has more legs, but I think they need to refuel it. They need to think what is its purpose for her hearkening back to old movies and quoting, and is she delusional? Is it a mind game? I just think they need to kind of revisit putting some thought into it. But I think they can go. I mean, they can go either direction. Tony Storm is talented enough to make it work without it. I just think she's really into it, and I like the gimmick enough, but I don't want them to coast with it. I think you got to keep refueling the tank, justifying it. But Mariah May, in terms of the outcome, I mean, I think the outcome can go either way. I think you can stretch this out. I don't think it matters that much. I think they're going to feud beyond the kind of first one-on-one match, and I think they ought to. But I think Mariah May, Joel has talent to be a centerpiece act in the division. I wish they had one women's title belt, so it was just kind of laid out and clear, and it seemed more special when you got in a singles world title program. I just don't think there's enough differentiation with the TBS and AEW women's title. That one is more important than the other. So anyway, Rude Dog, back to you. Any follow-up on that or anything else you want to add?
Well, yeah, follow-up is also Tony Storm looked like quite a bit different. I mean, they didn't do any of the black and white stuff, even though it was a run-in or whatever. But she also had different makeup on, which made her look a little more sinister. So I'm not sure if that's going to weigh in.
Maybe she has seasonal gimmicks. She wants to be really creative. And so this will be something different. And then, another 4, 6, 8 months goes by, and then she introduces something new. Maybe she's just going to try on different hats, so to speak.
Well, I'm a fan of both of them. So either way they go, won't be bad. But thank you guys so much. That's all I got.
Great. Thanks, Rude Dog. Appreciate it.
Have a good
couple other things. Tracy Bell jumped in on the chat and said, well, we do sometimes have to suspend disbelief in watching wrestling. It's just not plausible that someone's going to be set on fire on a weekly live cable TV program. That took me out of the moment. Otherwise, a good to great match. And Chris Johnson just said, seems like some of the old War Games had good builds. Some felt forced, like this one. And a recommendation, Bandit Jacob says, Sting Squadron versus the Dangerous Alliance was where it was at in 92, baby. Jeff Jarrett did wrestle, by the way, in the September 4th, 2000 War Games match on Monday Nitro. All right, so we have our on-site correspondent joining us, Dan. Welcome to the show. Good to see you again. Traveling all over the place this month. Good to see you. How was the show tonight?
It was a lot of fun. It was a little bit of everything. We stayed for the Royal Rampage, which we just got home from, and that was a little
spoiler
slow.
alert. Do you want to? Should we do it like? Let's give people 5 seconds to mute or fast forward.
Count down like I do with my students.
Yeah. So we're doing that. But yeah, go. What now? Everyone's been warned. I'm eager to hear because I know I'll hear before Friday anyway. How'd that go? What happened? And we'll get back to Dynamite.
So they had quite a fair number of compelling wrestlers in there, but it came down to Darby and Claudio. Darby eliminated Brody King, I believe, in the first ring, and then Claudio eliminated. There was Jeff Jarrett, Claudio, and Brian Cage left in the second ring, and so it came down to Claudio and Darby will get the world title shot at the U.S. Open, Flushing Meadows, where they go. So Arthur Ashe.
Yep.
Those two were good. That was like I said, in the middle. Match dragged a little bit, but I think my nephew might be a little upset that we stayed the whole 35 minutes or whatever it was. But it was fun.
How old's your nephew?
Oh gosh, Dylan's 20. Yeah.
Okay. Did he enjoy the show?
What'd you think, Dylan?
Did he enjoy the show overall, or he thought 2 hours is enough for 3 hours?
He got up at 5 o'clock this morning. We all know.
Okay.
So, well, how would you evaluate the show, Dylan?
It was good overall.
Dylan's not even going to get in the shot. Look at this.
Okay, I'll hear
my background.
Hello. This was better of the 2 Dynamites that I've been to, though I've been a little bit spent today, so I think the Rampage taping was a bit too much for me personally. But
fair enough.
Yeah.
He was voting that we would leave before the taping started, and I kind of took executive action, and so I'm in trouble now. That's okay, but it wasn't that bad. I mean, it was fun. It was good. It was just he's had a long day, so yeah.
Yeah, no, totally understandable. Good to add that context. People want to know why you're listed as Dan, available at 10:30 on your caption.
Well, because we were in the Uber and the guy kept going in circles, and I was like, I really don't want to be on camera in the dark here, driving through random parts of we circled Bridgestone Arena about 3 or 4 times. I'm not convinced the guy knew what he was doing, but yeah. So I didn't know that was a public name. So yeah.
It's a public name.
Available 24/7, folks.
It's a harmless public mistake. It could have been a lot worse.
Over the years, I've probably done worse, and certainly some more public officials have. So yeah.
Yes. Bennett Jacob says, Dan, we want you back on the post show. So yeah, we'll try to do that again.
That's the plan once school gets going. That's the plan.
Yeah.
I think, or even a week before school, maybe 4 weeks, something like that. So it's in the agenda. I've just been traveling a lot.
Dan Keister, for people on the audio only side of things, if you recognize the voice, PWTorch contributor and rotating co-host here on the post show. So Dan, tell us about lead the way a little bit. We'll certainly throw some questions your way, but
and it sounds like you had someone on site already speak to you.
No, we didn't.
Oh, okay.
No.
Crowd was great. First of all, the crowd was hot. I don't know what WrestleTick said or whatever, but it looked
6,000-ish. I think they had it.
Yeah, I was gonna guess 7. I mean, it really looked pretty good. The lower bowl was pretty full, and we were opposite. We were not going to be on camera, however you describe that. We were even with the hard cam, so we got a little bit better seats. And but every section was pretty full, and the crowd was into it. And the guys in front of us were cool. They were fun. They were having a good time. And I gave a little kid a high five when I left because he was so excited that Darby won. So people were enjoying the show, and they were. I felt pretty engaged in the blood and guts, and I think that Jericho match was a risk, but the crowd stayed with it. And I think they enjoyed that. Yeah. So I'm not saying that, I understand if people were critical of that to some degree, but the crowd bought it. So that helped. And,
I mentioned that earlier before I got on that. Even a match that I'm not into, if the crowd is into it, I mean, it doesn't mean I end up loving it, but it gets it more than halfway to enjoying it. If you compared to a dead crowd where you're like, not only is this not for me, but nobody's into this, what are they thinking? As opposed to, this is peculiar, it's not my style, but it's actually kind of fun because I'm vicariously enjoying it through how much the crowd is into it. And I'm glad to hear it didn't feel like it just dragged, because it
really
was a
did.
record.
I felt like
Yeah.
it could have. So
Yeah.
you know, that was good. And the New Japan guys were over. I mean,
They're singing their songs. And,
Royal
Yeah.
Rumble thing, or the Rumble, whatever they call it, Royal Rampage Rumble.
Yeah. yeah, Royal Rampage, I think.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
was over, and Shibata was over, and obviously Suzuki was over, so that was good.
Mhm.
MJF that was a good contrast to some of the bloody stuff later in the show, I think. So that was a pretty good start, and yeah,
Any cheers for MJF?
A few.
Yeah.
He tried
But nothing to
shoot
be
him
concerned
down.
about. Yeah.
Yeah, he did a pretty good job of shooting him down. You know, people were chanting USA there for a while, and then of course you heard it. I'm sure he's like, you don't count for my USA or whatever, because you know this is redneck hillbilly area, and I'm in Long Island. So, but yeah, the you know, and everybody was for Ospreay, so that was good. And Darby was super over. I felt like Britt was quite over. Toni Storm was probably more over than Britt or anybody in the women's side. I felt like even the mention of her name got a big reaction. And they did a nice thing for Tony Schiavone between shows. They showed the Waterloo induction.
Oh, nice.
And all that in the video. They have a really nice video they put together for that. And it was a first-class speech he gave and a first-class event. And his family was, anyone doesn't know, I was at Waterloo. So I may be the only non-AEW employee that saw Tony Schiavone last Friday get inducted into the Hall of Fame and saw him get recognized tonight in Nashville. But that's just a lucky coincidence.
Yeah. Second, we'll go, Joel. I'll throw to you. I had a question I want to remember, but anything you want to ask Dan about his live experience?
Yeah, Dan, really good to see you, man. So just want to ask you to just kind of rank, some of the top stars there and their reactions there, and how the crowd thought about them, because this had quite a few different people on the show, obviously started hot with MJF and Will Ospreay, but just wanted to get kind of a gauge as to who was the most over on the show.
Yeah, and it would be hard to really narrow that down beyond maybe 6 people. On the women's side, Toni Storm for sure. I mean, the crowd, like I said, they mentioned her name and the crowd just really popped. And there was heat for what Mariah was doing there after her match. And people really into her. Certainly, MJF, had a lot of heat. Maybe a little more than Ospreay. I mean, Ospreay got a good response. But then within the match itself, I mean, you had Darby, Hangman, and Swerve. And those three and Tony may even be a little bit above MJF in terms of response tonight. That crowd wanted to see, Swerve and Hangman, which is effective booking. I mean, if you don't want to see that, they're doing something really wrong, because that's the story. And both guys got big responses. And it's hard, Hangman's an anti-hero that has a cause, so it's kind of tricky and nuanced, but I prefer that to stupid and boring. So
that's a low bar, but yes. Your pizza's not good, but I prefer it to a bowl of dirt. Yeah. I mean, I know what you're saying, but the way you said it, I think Swerve could use just a full-fledged, straight-up heel feud, just so people can, cheer him outright. But did you get a sense? I mean, maybe you said, like, what was the split between Hangman and Swerve when they were fighting? Or were people just into them fighting and getting their hands on each other?
They were mostly into seeing them fighting, but still Swerve had the crowd support. Swerve would be the baby face. And of course, Hangman beat up Jeff Jarrett in the Royal Regal, whatever, the Rampage Rumble. So he came out. There was a heel there and helped cost Jeff Jarrett his dream. So they're not being. I mean, again, he's a bad guy with a cause, but he's the bad guy in the story, I think.
But being threatened to be fired by the other bad guys, adding more ambiguity to the mix.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So that was interesting. And but Swerve was obviously the hero, trying to get free and get in there and fight. And I mean, I personally, I can't rate how risky some of these things are. But when Darby climbed across the top of that cage and did that coffin drop, that blew me away personally out of anything we saw tonight. I mean, that was just, we were like, wow.
To me, that felt less risky in the sense, one, it's just Darby, but two, he's monkey bar climbing, he's got control, he's hanging, and then he can determine himself letting go and coffin dropping straight down. There's not a lot of variation. Like, to me, what Bowens did is more risky in the sense that you're flying at an angle. There's tables. Are you going to miss them? If you hit them on the side, the other ones fall on you. Was there a big spot that got the biggest reaction of the blood and guts match?
See, I thought that one did, the Darby spot.
The Darby spot did? Okay.
But
I was wondering if the barbed wire sandwich did. That came across to me as the biggest reaction.
Which was that? I'm sorry.
The barbed wire sandwich with Bowens earlier in the match.
It's hard to keep it all straight, Wade.
Fair enough.
I was glad to see Mark Briscoe get, and he was over also, and he, that was about the only bump I've seen Okada take. He got the
talking about that.
Yeah, so he got one over on everybody, and that was really cool. It was, it's not the most logical thing in the world, but the crowd was into it the whole way, and it was a I hate to say fun match because that seems it kind of underselling the seriousness of it, but people were enjoying it, and like I said, there were a lot of kids around us that were really into Darby, so that was they were really happy for him.
Did you feel like you were watching royalty when you saw Okada in person here? I know it's not.
I mean,
so and I asked that as a setup for, did it live up to your expectations then, given his
I saw Okada
fish out of water?
I saw Okada wrestle Tanahashi in Dallas, and that to me is peak Okada, and this is Okada having fun, which is still cool to see. But he's I keep thinking, and I keep saying this about Jay White too, that they're going to eventually turn it up, and I'm trying to be patient. So it was cool. It was really neat, but it wasn't. I mean, that match when he was, I know they didn't sell out American Airlines when he wrestled Tanahashi a couple years ago in the G1, maybe 3 years ago now, but that crowd was just on fire, and that, like I said, that was peak Okada.
Yeah, we had a lot of chat room comments about Okada just looking like a fish out of water and not really doing much, and then selling for the staple gun and all that.
I think it's by design. I hope so, but yeah, it's not peak Okada for sure.
No, I mean, if the Bucks are just like, hey, you get paid a lot of money and you're not going to have to do anything, it's a good deal, and you get to show this other side of you, but he never steps up, that'll be a bummer. And worse than Nakamura, which I know we went through the whole phase of being excited for him, and then it sort of was not a retirement tour, but I don't know. It's like some of the TNA, some of the XWCW guys who showed up in TNA, and it was like, hey, easy paycheck, and we don't have to do anything, and there's no pride here. I don't think it's at that level with Okada, and Dan, I think it's worth holding out hope, especially for Okada. Hopefully Jay White too. So anyway, go ahead, Dan.
Well, I think they're building Okada and Hangman, that little thing where Hangman
hit him.
Yeah, it's like he's always treated Hangman like a young boy. And there's going to be heat there eventually, and obviously the Bucks will be on Team Okada, so that's out there. So yeah, I'm still hoping for the best. But yeah, it wasn't the same as seeing him wrestle Tanahashi, and this was when Tanahashi was still closer to his peak at Dallas. That might be my favorite live wrestling show ever, actually. That New Japan show, the G1 I went to.
Yeah, I wonder if Hangman and Swerve just fight their way into being partners against the Bucks, or if a third person gets added and Okada's in the mix there too. Okay, I'll throw in a super chat here because we're talking about the Chop Fest. Adam Kidd with a super chat. Thank you, Adam. I said we'd get to you. Sorry for the delay. He goes, I'd rather punch myself in the face than ever watch another 15-minute Chop Fest. To that, I guess you just had to be there. Maybe too. Well, no, you didn't have to be there. You can enjoy it at home too. But yeah. So, Dan, did we get a Tony Khan sighting?
Several.
Well, how'd it go? Several. Yay.
He came out before the main show, and then he came out after the main show, and he thanked the crew, which I thought was nice and I think genuine. Between shows, and they recognized Tony Schiavone, and they showed the Waterloo. I mean, it took them close to 15 minutes at least. I mean, they had a lot of stuff to clear out of that ring to set up for Rampage. So he was kind of stretching a little bit, but it was all sincere. And like I said, I've only seen him. Well, I've seen him in Vegas and Chicago at the pay-per-views, but my previous Dynamite experiences have been in the smaller Kansas City / Independence, Missouri building. And this is the pro hockey arena, and it looked pretty good. I mean, I think they probably had a good walk up today. Like I said, I mean, it was a good crowd. And it was a hot crowd. They were into it.
WrestleTix, for whatever it's worth, I looked it up. They have, as of within the hour of the show beginning, they had 5,009 tickets distributed, and the setup was 5,500, so a little lower than.
Okay. Well, it made it look good. I guess 7,000.
Yeah.
I'm not an actuary in that regard. So.
Yeah. Did you enjoy on the big screen, and did the crowd enjoy and laugh at or react negatively or roll their eyes in any way to Alex Marvez and Ospreay early on?
Probably roll their eyes mostly.
Yeah.
They had one fan react like crazy. I think it was during Blood and Guts, just for a split second, and the crowd really popped for that. It's one of those things. That was one you had to be there for, but it was he looked appropriately shocked at one of the moves.
Was there anything different, Dan? Roughly speaking, how many AEW shows have you been to?
I've been to 2 or 3 Dynamites. I want to say 3 before tonight, and then I was the original Double or Nothing with Rich Fann, and I was at the original All In, and then I was at 2 or 3 of the All Outs. So that would be yeah.
That'd be 17. No, I'm kidding. So did you? Yeah. Yep. I stopped counting, but I'd guess 9 would be my over/under on. What's your over/under, Joel? Did you keep track?
I have no idea.
That's fair enough. It's late.
That was purposely confusing.
No, that's okay. So my question to you is, did you notice anything different about this AEW crowd in any way? The makeup, demographics, who they responded to, how they responded. Is there anything different about a good, not a great, but a good crowd for War Games in a major arena? I think, if a healthy AEW would be at 7,000, 8,000, 9,000 legit for a War Games annual match like this in a major NHL arena. But it's a good crowd relative to what they've been drawing lately. But I mean, it seems like it's the hardcores who are there. Yeah. But yeah, tell me about that. What'd you sense?
More kids than I've ever seen at the Kansas City shows. And the first Kansas City show I went to was the Pac Kenny Omega Iron Man match, which was excellent. And the crowd was super hot for that. And I want to say they were building to I just remember Jericho coming out with all the inner circle, and they all had the matching uniforms on. And it was a big show. They were building to him and Moxley at the time. And then the other Kansas City shows have not been quite as hot. So this would definitely be hotter crowd than the last. I want to say I've been to 3 of the Kansas City shows than the last 2. And it was definitely more kids and more families and stuff. And and the people in front of us were clearly nice guys. They were funny guys. They were telling a lot of funny jokes, but they were also into WWE. And I don't know, how big of a mix that is. I couldn't really tell too much from the rest of the crowd, but the first AEW show you went to, it was more of maybe a little anti-WWE or not as many people that were going to admit to knowing what was going on with WWE. I heard a few people talking about what was going on with WWE.
Did what happened after War Games ended? Because they went off the air pretty quick after the match ended. Did Perry get help being uncuffed? I'm trying to recall the last.
He kind of collapsed. He basically collapsed, and they finally got him out of there. And they had the Team AEW celebrate on the stage, minus Swerve, who's still unconscious for all we know. And then they showed particularly the Bucks looking dejected, and they all helped Perry out. It was nothing. That it was well played, but nothing that you would probably see on TV. And then again, Tony kept thanking the crew because the crew was getting rid of a lot of plunder as they redid the aprons and cleaned up the mat and got ready for Rampage.
Yeah. Joel, anything else you want to ask Dan as you've listened to this conversation?
Yeah, we spent a lot of time talking about the finish of the Blood and Guts match and Darby threatening to light Jack Perry on fire. What was the crowd reaction to this? Do they think that this was a satisfying conclusion to the Blood and Guts match, or was anybody buying the threatening of throwing the gasoline on him and all that? Just talk about the crowd response to that.
So when he got out the gas can and started pouring, people were like, "Oh, they were like, holy crap!" There was a response there, and maybe that's a good suspension of disbelief. I didn't buy it too much. I didn't care for it myself.
Yeah, I didn't either.
But yeah, the crowd seemed okay because it's like, well, I know you guys have probably talked about this. I mean, you can bring out a machine gun too. I mean, what's the difference?
Yeah. It's the old sledgehammer thing with Triple H. You're not going to swing the sledgehammer at their head. We know it. You're only going to put your hand over it and butt it into their, with your hand covering it, jab them with it. But when you swing it, the person's going to duck. You're not going to actually splatter someone's skull with a watermelon. Jungle Boy Jack Perry, he's not covered in any protective coating like last time. You're not going to actually set him on fire. So you're introducing suspense without any suspense, and thus it becomes an eye roll.
Yeah, I mean, I prefer Magnum TA with that stick with the 2 prongs on it, putting it in Tully Blanchard's eye to anything else, because I believed he might take his eye out at Starrcade 85. This didn't do it for me, but the crowd seemed happy that the good guys won and seemed to think it was reasonably heroic. I didn't think it was particularly heroic. I mean, and I really.
But they hung Darby upside down, so he should be able to threaten to kill somebody with gasoline.
I will say, talking about old, I know he's got a lot of hair, but man, Mark Briscoe caught Jack Perry with a chair shot that I thought, man, I don't know.
I replayed that because I'm not excusing it, but I've been highly critical of this going back to ECW days and a lot of concussions, and a lot of people aren't with us anymore due to headaches and concussion syndrome that may be related to all those chair shots that I was decrying at the time that they were happening while wrestlers were celebrating, and people like Raven were going, oh, there's a technique and you're just, let people do what they want. This chair shot was a little bit different in the sense that the loud noise came from the top of the chair hitting the cage, I think, and the flexible part that you sit on is the part that hit his head. And so that had give. So if you're going to go for a loud noise and you're going to do an unprotected chair shot to somebody handcuffed, this seemed like I don't want to say reasonably, a clearly safer way to do it than hitting someone with a chair where the seat doesn't move and it is hitting them flush. So, I only rewatched it once, but my take was, okay, that wasn't as horrible as I was imagining, because most of the noise came from the backrest of the chair hitting the cage. So, still don't like it, but
No, I'm glad to hear that though, because it took me out of it for a second.
I mean, nobody wants to see people legit hurt. I mean, it's just that doesn't. I know it's weird to say, but it's 2024. It's not even 1985. It's not 1978. And so, just you don't need people really. I mean, bleeding from the chest from chops. That's that'll heal. Superficial stuff, but you don't want to see people getting concussions. Joel, anything else you want to ask or bring up?
Just going back to the Jericho Suzuki match. I mean, was everybody into this in the crowd? There was the chop forever chant, or was anybody like turned off and like disinterested in this?
Both my nephew and I are big Suzuki fans, so we were probably more forgiving than maybe we should have been. But I didn't notice people being turned off by it. Like I said, I thought it was a big risk. It wouldn't have been my recommendation, but I didn't notice a lot of negative reaction to it. I mean, people were kind of into it, and that wouldn't have been my prediction. So that I could be misobserving also, but and again, our section was full. We were kind of catty corner to the ring there, closer to where Jack Perry was at the end. So yeah.
Two just kind of housekeeping questions. Did Pac get any kind of particular response? And then how over was Mercedes Moné as a heel?
Pac got a decent response. Nothing big, but it was a pretty short match. The thing I did like, Wade, is I'm sure this was during commercial, but they played the entrance music for the other guy, the bear guy. And, they played that up, and they do a good job, as you know, during the commercials. They don't just sit there and don't do anything. And I think WWE's gotten better about that also. And then Mercedes, I mean, she was a heel and Britt was a good face. I mean, the problem is people like Hikaru Shida, so that crowd was split. And but I would say in this crowd tonight, the main women's match was definitely Tony and Mariah. They got a bigger response than Britt and Mercedes.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, that's a little bit surprising. Not totally surprising, because there's been some good work there that justifies it. But there's some legacy stars who they're competing with to get that pop. Cool, Dan. Anything else you want to share about your experience tonight?
No, it was just a fun night, and I'm glad you could have me on here. I think I'm keeping people awake in the air. I'll look forward, but I will be back. It's nice to have people that want to see me host again, and I enjoy
Just
it.
one.
And I think in a few weeks. Well, one's better than zero.
People is plural. I only heard one.
I have very.
I'll make it 2, Dan.
Oh, that's so sweet. Come on, chat room. Light things up here.
No, but I appreciate it. I'll let you guys get back to it, and good to see you all. Yeah.
Thanks, Dan. Always a pleasure. Always a blast.
All right. No.
Take care. All right, cool. Joel, we got an email. I'll just run through this quick, and then we'll sign off. JB from Detroit said, "I'm glad that they recapped and led with Ospreay and Jeff this week. Something that significant deserves the time it got. My concern, as I wrote in my report at PWTorch.com, is Biden was giving a pretty historically significant statement about not seeking re-election and hadn't been seen on camera. So, I was hoping they would, replay it later in the show, but Tony's not going to do that. So, in a way, we give him credit, but it almost felt like maybe it was in their mind filler because they thought people wouldn't be watching because of Biden."
Yeah. I mean, how far in advance did we know that Joe Biden was giving this speech?
Oh, several days.
Okay, several days. We knew the exact time with that. Okay.
Oh, yeah. The networks need preparation for an Oval Office address, and they block out about 10, 12 minutes. They don't allow Oval Office addresses to the country to go a half hour because they have network programming to get to. So they're sort of in an agreement. It'll be kept short, but it will start sharp at the top of the hour without delay, unlike press conferences. So everything was planned out. Yeah.
And excuse my ignorance on that I just not fully aware of all that. But yeah, I mean, I would have liked to have seen them just draw back more attention to that, but clearly they're trying to, they're trying to get through a lot of stuff in the show and, keep things moving at a pace to eventually get to the blood and guts stuff that, a recap on that would have been nice, but yeah, I'm glad that we got to see a video package from that match because it was so significant. And that's what they need to continue to do is when they have these big matches, draw attention to those things and remind people as to what happened on the previous show.
JB also says, "Why does MJF get to create an entirely new belt and rename it?" At least Shivani addressed the ridiculousness of it later in the evening from the booth during the Pac match. I would like to see some official, structure to things. I just don't. I mean, it's just so inconsistent. As prominently featured in the Jericho Suzuki match, our chop battles a bit overdone in AEW. I think they're overdone, period, but teach their own. TK is holding another Royal Rampage on Friday night with the winner getting a title shot at Grand Slam. Could this in any way telegraph who'll be holding the title after All In or All Out? My initial reaction is no, because Swerve and Danielson are both essentially faces, barring any drastic change in character between now and then. We gave a spoiler warning earlier. I don't want to have people scared if they fast forwarded 30 seconds to miss a spoiler, so we won't get into who won on that. We'll just let that question linger in people's minds. Because I think we know too much to answer it without being spoilery. I really appreciated the Jeff Jarrett Danielson backstage segment. It's exactly one of the pieces that is needed to guide the path to Danielson's full-time career culmination at Wembley. Everyone, including Jarrett, believes in Bryan Danielson. They just want to make sure that the fire is still there and will be there for this big moment in his career in AEW history. It faces the match. It gives a match very significant feeling. So it's interesting, the idea of if Danielson is kind of approaching this with a foot out the door or winding down, Jarrett might be speaking out loud what some people are thinking, and they want to tell the story in the weeks they have left. Hey, it sounds like Danielson is just wanting to go on a retirement tour and have, matches that please him, that check a box on his list. And instead, now you have Jarrett, maybe others, or maybe it'll just be Jarrett, saying, if you're going to do this, go all in. Like, don't have a foot out the door. You're not going to win a world title, and you should want to win a world title. So I do hope we get a few weeks of them turning this up, Joel, and making people care. I mean, we've seen Daniel Bryan do it before and get people really excited about his mission. And boy, that mission does not seem to exist with him right now. This is, he's just been on a sort of self-indulgent dream match tour in AEW and sort of half-hearted into it. And when he is really amped up, it feels a little performative. I want to believe that he wants his title, even if it's a face-to-face matchup. Joel, what do you think?
Yeah, you'd like to think that Bryan Danielson is playing, it's playing the long game here, but he's got a short amount of time to get people really invested in this match, and you'd like to think that he's thought about how he wants to build to this and really get people engaged, because this is the main event of their biggest show of the year. It's going to do the largest gate for in 2024 for the company, and it's going to be supposedly his last major match. So I want to see them put a lot more focus moving forward here now that we got Blood and Guts out of the way, that things are really just central focused onto Swerve and Bryan Danielson as that main event match. And I liked the content that Jeff Jarrett had to give to Danielson, interrupting the interview. But, as we've talked about Jeff Jarrett's place within AEW, I don't know if he's the right person to do that, where it just doesn't give me that same feeling that Joel, I don't know exactly who that would be to do that. Yeah. But, now I want to see Danielson really focusing and enter into that new level of, of that mindset, really wanting to be a champion and just, telling people how he wants that feeling. He wants to represent AEW. He wants to be on top and have a long reign on top, talk about those types of things.
Like if I win the title, I'm delaying my retirement or my full-time action. I got another chapter in me and I'm fired up. Make people believe. I mean, it feels a little lame duck, lame duck title shot. Let's see. I love the idea of Camille as Monet's muscle, as advocating for either her or Megan Bain to have this exact role and further enhance Monet's heel character. I think that either before or at All In, we could get a returning Jamie Hayter to join Britt, and even the odds ultimately leading to a big women's tag match at All Out. Any thoughts on that, Joel?
Yeah, that's very possible here with Camille being entered into the equation. There was the connection between Jamie Hayter and Britt Baker from last year. I think things have gotten a little bit quiet now as far as Jamie Hayter's return, and given what her injury was, I would think that we got to be close to a return for her. And you do have to be I would hope that Tony has learned the lesson from last year, that even though he's bought himself an extra week, that you need to have a lot of these outcomes and things that happen at All In leading to what's going to happen at All Out, because that's the way that you've scheduled things.
Personal opinion question: should a glove be considered an illegal weapon if used in a submission hold? Joel.
What was that? That
should Britt Baker be able to have a glove for a submission, or does that add illegal leverage?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the glove thing where she hits the specific nerve where she can be able to do that. I mean, the glove is whatever, but some of the other stuff that they do gets kind of ridiculous.
I'm okay with the glove as long as it's not like spiked with spikes or numbing.
Yeah, I was gonna say poison or something. Yeah.
Novocaine. My tongue can't fight I've lost all my strength in my tongue to fight the hold. Yeah. All right. I didn't really get the teasing of dissension between Team AEW before the Blood and Guts match tonight. Was it just to give Mark Briscoe his mandatory weekly motivational speech? Just made everyone on the face team seem less likable outside of Briscoe. By the way, I don't want to forget to mention this, and I'll do it in my Wade Keller hotline too. This is the type of thing that sometimes I forget and gets covered in the Keller hotline for VIP members when I review these shows start to finish, right after I do the post shows. So note, if you're not VIP and you don't watch these shows, but you want to catch up and you enjoy the post show discussions, but you don't always see the complete shows. If you're a VIP member, you can start with a 15-minute or so recap that I give start to finish, just running down everything that happened on the show and check my thoughts on it. Things that we didn't cover on the post show, I put in that. It can be the sequence if you're a VIP member before listening to these post shows. And then you get to listen to the post shows with the pre-recorded ads and plugs removed. So that's another benefit. PWTorch.com/GoVIP. And you are a PWTorch Wade Keller sicko if you're still listening to us at the 2-hour mark. So you should be a VIP member. You're one of the dedicated ones. So support us. But you're welcome to watch either way and listen either way. Okay, so my point was Britt Baker. She had the advantage, and then she did one of my pet peeves is she turned her back to Hikaru Shida, and it backfired. She had a chance to win a match, turned her back, and then does the DMD thing to the crowd. And yes. I don't use the word hate much because I think it's overused, and I think it's an important word that should be safe for important occasions in life. I hate when baby faces turn their backs on their opponents to play for crowd chants. It makes them feel so undisciplined, so unfocused. It makes it seem like the stakes are so low that they care more about getting a crowd to use a catchphrase that can help sell t-shirts or get a reaction than they do winning a match. You would never see that. I mean, it's equivalent, Joel. You're wearing the Minnesota Vikings hat. It's like when someone is running to the end zone and they slow down and hold the ball out early, prematurely, before they get to the end zone, and you're worried they're going to trip and fall. It's going to get it's going to fall out of their hand. Or it has happened. Someone catches up to them and makes them pay. And if they make them pay, even if it's on my team, I'm happy they made them pay. I hate that. And it backfired. And Tony Schiavone called Britt Baker out on it and said that was a mistake for her to do that. And to me, it's also symptomatic of a mindset of a wrestler that makes me respect them less. I'm like, how can you possibly think that that's going to keep fans engaged in wanting to see you win if you don't have enough discipline that you decide to just advertise that this is a show? It just, I mean, it's not as bad because Drew McIntyre doesn't back turn to his fans when he counts 1, 2, 3 before doing the Claymore. I always wanted to line up with him waiting for his opponent to stand so he can hit him, not like delaying doing the move. Like every spot you do should be your eyes on your opponent, and everything you do is trying to win the match. And you can showboat later. If it's a tag match, tag out, showboat, do whatever. Didn't like that. And that gets into the a little bit to the question of all the baby faces in the mandatory speech. It's a stretch to connect that, but I will. I had there's something else that I thought was similar tonight, not as bad. So, but yeah, I think everybody just sort of having their own cause and saying I'm not in it as a team was a weird segment to have. And I do think JB is right. It was ultimately just to get a speech from Briscoe to rile everyone up and motivate them to stick together for a cause that still isn't particularly defined other than the Bucks are annoying.
Yeah, I mean, it's trying to get that Mark Briscoe spot in there. It's become, a favorite for a lot of people. I'm sure Tony Khan enjoys having, giving this new life to the Mark Briscoe character since the tragic passing of his brother. And trying to find him different spots to be on the show and represent AEW. He is a great showman, in that aspect of wrestling. But yeah, it was a weird promo, again, trying to show that there's dissension. Not everybody's on the same page with the team AEW to create some doubt with it for the outcome of that. But it's they needed to cut a promo and it's kind of like, what else are they going to do? Is it just going to be just a fake, they're all on the same page for this united cause that has been unclear, over the past few weeks since they've announced this match. So I mean, it's just trying to make the best out of that, and ultimately just leading to Mark Briscoe getting people excited about it. But as far as what you were saying before, babyface doing the stuff, I mean, that's always been an issue. I mean, longtime listeners have heard you talk about that before, where it's just it's not a great spot.
No.
When you turn your back,
money, they were that
RVD, doing that, those types of things, and so for Britt Baker, I mean, that is what's disappointing about this return, is that you would have hoped that there would be the cliched fresh coat of paint for her, and that there would be some differences. Maybe she had reflected on some of the things that hadn't worked for her in the past, and you saw a lot of just kind of the similar stuff that doesn't work in the ring, to where she's, she looks the part. She looks like a megastar. She's very charismatic. She's got a great personality for this. There's a lot of things working for her. But when it comes to the in-ring and the in-ring psychology of things, there's just so much questionable stuff there, where you wish that there'd be somebody to relegate some more of that, where it's not you haven't fully made it, that you should always be in the mindset that you're learning and trying to improve. And I think that if there was some more curating of some of the stuff in her matches, it could really help to boost her star power.
Yeah. By the way, thanks to Ramen Noodles said that's how I keep track of WWE regarding my hotlines, and Bandit Jacobs adding the hotlines are the best, better than watching 3 hours of Raw some weeks. So go VIP, everybody. Back to JB's email, were the back-to-back squash matches before Blood and Guts the proverbial buffer matches, so as not to burn out the crowd energy like you typically see at a PLE or pay-per-view? I don't know. I mean, strategically, maybe that crossed their mind, but I mean, it felt like content you might normally see on Dynamite. It just so happened to be before Blood and Guts. I mean, but we'll add to this, because JB says, was it the right week to bring Tony Storm back? It seems to me as if this big moment should have been saved for a week that wasn't Blood and Guts. On the positive side, I did like what I saw of what might be Tony's new and or evolved character. So he's kind of saying both things. One, you didn't burn out the crowd, but maybe you actually gave him too much because the Toni Storm return got lost in the mix. I will add that to me, Toni Storm dressed up the way she was could be for sure a character change, her flipping, but it also could be she just wanted to be inconspicuous. I'd have to rewatch how she got.
I thought it was like a disguise. Like there was
Yeah.
a wig that was fell off of her into the ring. So
Right. So that's why I'm not ready to read too much into it. It just seemed like I want to be inconspicuous so I can sneak in. And although she didn't hit her opponent from behind, like, sort of the thing you do, she just stood behind Mariah and waited for it to turn around. So it didn't really accomplish a lot to be in a disguise if you're not going to take advantage of it. Am I missing something, Joel?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't like the execution of the ending of that, of her making the return, doing the disguise, standing behind her. I mean, I can see when you're writing it down on paper and discussing it backstage of what a great return for Toni Storm. But in execution, it felt like this was not the right week to do it, that I would have continued to establish Mariah May, help sell that injury a bit more of when will we see Toni Storm make her return, and and just draw more attention to it when it happens on that show and make it into a bigger deal. Whereas this just kind of was another piece in a big long show.
And there's just so many ideas that are redone in a just kind of dumbed down way without honoring the initial concept behind it. The lumberjack match is always my thing. Like, you should have a lumberjack match because the heel has been running and getting intentionally counted out, or not being willing to stay in the ring. So now we're going to surround the ring to keep them, or to keep other people from interfering. A cage match should not because it's necessarily just a grudge and you want to see people get beat up, but to keep the heel from having an advantage of other people interfering on their behalf, although that gets a little ruined when people break through cage doors and climb cages. And same thing, if you're going to sneak into the ring in a disguise, it should be to get an actual advantage, not just stand behind them and wait for them to turn around and see you anyway. Now you're just doing things because they were done, but you're kind of telling on yourself that you don't know why they were done initially. And it's just kind of, low IQ derivative execution of stories. And you would hope that if you're an agent, a producer, a booker, a promoter, a wrestler involved, that you would know enough about wrestling history to ask yourself, what was the point of this original concept? And are we hitting those points and not just, rushing to the, to the end of it and not setting it up.
Yeah.
Chris Johnson, by the way, says Joel Dehnel is really good at this.
Thank you, Chris.
Yes. Ramen Noodle says middle of the show felt like Rampage. I think it'll hurt the rating. Okay, couple more bullet points here from JB, and then we'll sign off. Was threatening to light Jack Perry on fire a way to force Matt Jackson to agree for Perry to give Allen a title shot at All In, or to quit with an anticlimactic ending? I don't think they would threaten to set someone on fire and characterize it as anticlimactic. I think they thought it was climactic because they didn't account for the fact that it's entirely not believable that Perry was actually going to be set on fire and that Darby was, like Triple H, swinging the sledgehammer at a skull. It's not going to happen. Therefore, there's no suspense. So to me, I don't think it's an option. They were trying to be anticlimactic. I think they were trying to be climactic, where they're going to see somebody get burned alive with no fire extinguisher nearby, and he's going to be dead, or at least he's going to look a lot different from now on. Not to make light of burn victims, but I mean, it wasn't suspenseful. It wasn't climactic. But I guess it's a way to have Perry, or not to have anyone say, I give up, to an actual wrestling hold. But I would hope wrestling holds would be enough. I'd like submission holds and wrestling holds to be enough for someone to give up. That shouldn't be not enough in a match like this. That should be enough.
Yeah.
Even if it's like a kendo stick across your neck in an STF, like, you can add a little to it, but ultimately base it on someone giving up because they're in too much pain and they don't want to feel more pain. That is the foundation of quitting a match, and you shouldn't try to be overly creative and outsmart yourself coming up with a finish in general.
Yeah, because as I made the point earlier, is that it forces you to keep having to raise the stakes even more and more and more within these blood and guts types matches. Whereas I think if you keep it within the realm of realism, that it just allows you into some more realistic possibilities, and it leads to different outcomes that are going to feel a lot more satisfying than threatening to light somebody on fire or threatening to do this, that, or the other thing that you can't follow through on, that ultimately just feels, I mean, nobody wants to see somebody lit on fire for the match, but as a climax, as the ending of the match, it falls a little flat,
MZ in the chat says, if Jack Perry ignored being told not to take an unprotected chair shot to the head, similar to being told not to use glass, what can be done if he doesn't listen? Is it still not Tony's responsibility? What can be done is Tony sets a tone of leadership that you don't defy his wishes and you don't go into business for yourself. That should just be a given. You honor the request of somebody who is signing your paychecks. And if he, in no way am I saying he defied any order or didn't get it approved, but in a abstract sense, if a wrestler disobeys the boss or goes into business for themselves, they should be fired and they are not being scapegoated. If they are fired or at least suspended or have their push diminished, there's a lot of things you can do to make sure that you get the respect of the wrestlers. But in this case, I don't think, my guess is Tony didn't approve or disapprove of it. It just happened.
Yeah, I hope as far as like the glass stuff with Jack Perry, I hope we totally just move on from that stuff completely.
Yeah. So Ramen Noodle says, I'll give another vote for Joel. I wish he was on every week. And KMB242 says, great co-host for a Viking fan. So Joel, I'm going to throw to you for a plug for your show because you are available every week. But before I do that, I do want to say MZ said supposedly there's a banned list except for special permission and approval. The glass was definitely not approved. Yeah, I was told when that ban list came out that wrestlers were like, yeah, that's never going to be enforced. And it was more to say if you're not a top guy and you're on dark, get it approved ahead of time. But if you're a top guy, no one was taking it seriously as some sort of edict they had to follow. So I'll just throw that out there. And Bandit Jacob says, good job, Joel. So Joel, tell people about your show. They search PWTorch in their podcast app. It's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, thus CarPlay. You can also, any Android or iOS app, you can stream it directly from PWTorch.com. All kinds of ways to get it. Search PWTorch. It's called the All Elite Conversation Club. Joel, tell people what you do.
Yeah, all of you guys have been very kind, and I encourage you to check out the show that I host alongside Greg Canner, the All Elite Conversation Club podcast. Greg has become a friend of mine where we just have a great free-flowing conversation talking about all things AEW, from the ratings to the news of what's going to be happening as far as their negotiations with WBD. We give more inside depth as far as what's happening on Dynamite. So if you like this show and you want to hear more conversation about that, and Greg definitely has his side and his opinion on things, which is great it makes for great chemistry for both of us to go back and forth, because sometimes I can fall into a little bit more cynical side of things with AEW, and he's always trying to look for the bright side of things. So it makes for good camaraderie going back and forth on that. And we just, with the different ways that we've watched wrestling throughout the years, we have different perspectives of things. So it makes for a very fun and different type of conversation talking about AEW, versus more of the routine of just analyzing the show, that we have our different aspects, and obviously a gap in age between both of us. So it just makes for a fun conversation on that stuff. And I see Rude Dog is saying, go Lions. Greg Canner would say that as well, as things are getting back into training camp. Football season is on the horizon here. So please check out our show, All Elite Conversation Club podcast, and also contribute to our mailbag at allelitecc@gmail.com.
Excellent, Joel. Thank you so much. Thanks to everybody in the chat room. Thanks to our video callers. Thanks to everybody for supporting us. Remember, everybody says it, and it's for a reason. Like us, like this show, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and add to the comments area. That helps us grow, and it just feels good to get some feedback. So like the show, comment below, and subscribe to our channel. Search PWTorch if you haven't yet, and while you're at it, also search Wade Keller so you can get the podcast version of this show, including some flashback episodes and other content. And then the Blue Logo Show, when you search Wade Keller, pops up. That includes the flagship edition, which yesterday dropped, and it included Jason Powell as my co-host, and we talked WWE, AEW, and more. And so those are all free, but if you go VIP, all those shows and all the VIP exclusives all on one feed. If you get a full VIP membership, you can break it down into specific shows and themes and have separate feeds on your phone app so that it's easier to kind of keep track of. You can subscribe to individual shows and groups of shows. It's a pretty slick setup if you get a full VIP membership. And that means these shows have the ads and plugs edited out. So it's a nice streamlined listening experience. Joel, thank you. We will talk to you soon and look forward to your next episode of Ollie Conversation Club and Viking Training Camp opening up just down the road from where I am. Are you visiting training camp this year?
I was thinking about it. I went a couple of years ago, so I'm debating whether or not I want to do it, but I got tickets to a couple of games. But
Nice.
are you gonna be going to Raw this coming Monday, Wade?
Probably not because of the logistics of doing this show.
Sure.
Not ruling it out, but yeah, I'd have to be tempted by something real specific that I want to be in person for. I've seen so many shows over the years, and the logistics of missing out on doing the live post show can kind of override a mundane Raw or a run of the mill Raw, even if I'm enjoying it these days. That said, being present for some Rhea Dom stuff and live with that storyline, being able to say I was there for a big moment. There's some other things. I haven't decided either way yet. I'd have to get a substitute host then.
It's your side of the metro, so I thought maybe it'd be a little bit easier to get over there.
I'm pretty equidistant where I am to Minneapolis and St. Paul. I mean, maybe 3-minute difference, but I'm kind of triangulating them. I'm pretty equal distance for both of them. But yeah, that would never stop me. Like the distance down to Minneapolis and St. Paul are both close enough for me. Yeah.
Target Center is the easiest. Get on 394. I'm there in less than 10 minutes in the parking ramp.
Yep. Cool. All right. Thanks everybody again, and we'll talk to you all next time.